Welcome to 3 hours of shadows and whispers that drift through the dark. These stories are meant to calm you while pulling you gently into mystery. Imagine the world growing quiet and still, the stars watching you with silent curiosity, and the wind carrying tales long forgotten. Tonight, I will take you to places where forgotten houses breathe old memories, where trees seem to hold secrets, and where the unknown waits just beyond sight. You will hear stories of lost travelers, strange lights flickering in the distance, and voices that might not be human. But remember, these stories are not here to frighten you, but to soothe you. Let each word roll like a soft wave, let your thoughts drift like clouds above, and allow the dark to become beautiful. If fear comes, let it fade gently like shadows swallowed by the morning light. So lie back, close your tired eyes, and let this journey carry you. We begin now with the first tale, a story that lingers like smoke, a story called The House Beyond the Hill. Story 1. The House Beyond the Hill. There is a road that winds through fields of tall, silent grass. On this road stands a house, old, leaning, yet strangely inviting still. The villagers say the house listens. It listens to footsteps on the path, to the whispers of travelers at night, and even to the quiet sound of breathing. It is said the house chooses who enters. It does not welcome everyone who knocks. Some walk past and feel nothing at all. Others feel watched before they arrive. One evening, near the end of summer, a man named Jonathan came to stay. He had heard tales of this house, the house beyond the lonely hill. Jonathan was a writer by trade. He loved strange stories and mysteries, and he believed this house could inspire a story unlike anything he had written. The sun had just begun to sink, and the sky glowed with fading gold. The house stood in silhouette on the hill, its roof sagging, windows black and still. Jonathan pushed the gate and walked forward. The grass brushed against his legs softly. He felt a chill climb up his spine, as if the air itself had shifted. The front door opened on its own. No creak, no groan, just silence. Jonathan stepped inside and whispered hello, his voice swallowed by the heavy air. The hallway was long, narrow, and cold. Paint peeled like cold paper from the walls. There were no pictures, no signs of life, just dust and the faint smell of wood. He set down his bag on the floor. The sound echoed through the empty house. Jonathan called out again, asking if anyone was here to greet him. But no one answered. Only silence remained. Yet the silence felt heavier now. It pressed on him, almost like weight, as though the walls leaned in to listen. Jonathan explored the lower rooms first. The kitchen was bare except for a single chair and a table, both covered in a layer of dust. The living room had a fireplace. Its stone surface was cracked and cold. Above it hung a mirror, fogged and dim, reflecting only his own shadowed face. Upstairs, the air felt colder still. Each step creaked beneath Jonathan's shoes. He opened the first door on the left and found a small room with nothing inside. The second room was stranger. A rocking chair stood near the window. Beside it, a candle burned quietly, though Jonathan swore it hadn't been lit. He approached the candle and stared closely. Its flame bent and flickered oddly. It seemed to lean toward him, almost alive, as though sensing his quiet breath. Jonathan backed away, uneasy but curious. He felt something behind him suddenly, the unmistakable feeling of someone watching. But when he turned, no one was there. Night arrived faster than expected. The house seemed to darken all at once. Jonathan lit a lantern from his bag and sat in the corner to write. His pen moved across the page slowly. The silence of the house grew deeper. He could hear faint sounds now, like footsteps moving on the floor above. Jonathan froze, listening carefully to the sound. It was soft, but it was real. The footsteps paused, then continued slowly, as if someone was pacing in circles. He stood and walked toward the stairs. Each creak of the steps felt louder. At the top, the air felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. The third room door was slightly open. Jonathan reached out and pushed it gently. Inside, the candle still burned alone, but the rocking chair was now moving. It swayed back and forth quietly, as though someone had just left it. Jonathan whispered into the empty room, asking who was there with him. The chair stopped instantly. The silence returned, sharp and clear. Jonathan's heart pounded like a drum. Something was definitely inside this house. He stepped back and returned downstairs. The front door was now closed tight. Jonathan hadn't shut it earlier, but now it wouldn't open at all. He was trapped. Jonathan pulled hard on the door. The wood groaned, but did not move. He tried the windows, but they stuck. The house had closed itself around him. The lantern flame trembled in his hand. He turned, feeling the chill deepen. The wall seemed to sigh quietly, like an old being breathing in sleep. Jonathan took a step back carefully. He whispered, "I don't mean harm." But his words fell thin and useless. The house was listening, but not answering. He walked into the kitchen once more. The chair had shifted slightly sideways. It faced him now, pointing directly forward, as though inviting him to sit down. Jonathan's heart beat hard in his chest. He forced himself to approach the chair. The candle in his lantern flickered, casting long shadows over the wooden table. As he touched the chair, it was warm. Too warm, as though someone had just sat. He jerked his hand away, startled deeply, and stumbled backward into the corner. Suddenly, a soft sound came from above. A low, dragging sound, like cloth on wood. Jonathan froze, staring toward the staircase again, waiting for the sound to come closer. It stopped. Then it began again. This time slower, heavier, more deliberate. Jonathan grabbed his notebook, holding it tight. Something inside him told him to stay calm. He walked up the stairs slowly, cautiously. Each step echoed through the hollow house. The sound grew louder with every step. It was coming from the third room. The door of the third room was closed. Jonathan reached for the handle with care. His fingers trembled as he gripped it. He pushed the door open very slowly. The candle inside was still burning steadily, but now the rocking chair was gone. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat, frozen. A faint whisper moved through the air. "Why are you here?" Jonathan's eyes widened. He looked around. There was no one, only shadows shifting. The voice sounded close, almost beside him, but he saw nothing but the candle. "I then just here to write," he said, his voice shaking softly. The whisper answered with a slow sigh, as if the house itself had spoken. Jonathan stepped backward, bumping the door frame. He turned and left the room quickly. He ran down the stairs, heart racing, nearly dropping his lantern on the floor. Back in the hallway, everything was still. The silence returned, heavy and unbroken. Jonathan leaned against the wall, breathing fast. The candle upstairs extinguished on its own. He needed to leave, but couldn't. The front door remained locked and sealed. The windows refused to open or crack. He was caught in this strange prison. Jonathan sat on the dusty wooden floor. He tried to calm his trembling hands. The notebook on his lap was blank, but the pen began to move by itself. He watched in shock as it wrote words. Slow, curling letters formed across the page. It wrote, "Stay until the story ends." Jonathan dropped the pen and stood quickly. The pen continued to move alone. More words appeared, written in sharp strokes. "Do not leave, we are waiting." Jonathan backed away, fear creeping through him. The hallway lights dimmed, flickering faintly. He didn't remember seeing any lights before. The lantern flame grew stronger and brighter, as though reacting to his racing thoughts. Jonathan decided to search for another exit. He walked toward the back of the house. There was a rear door near the kitchen, but it too was locked tightly shut. A sudden thud shook the ceiling above. It was loud, like something heavy dropped. Jonathan froze, staring up at the ceiling, his mind racing with fearful questions. He whispered to himself, "Not real, not real." But the footsteps began again, louder now. Something was moving quickly directly above him. Jonathan ran back into the main hall. He stopped when he saw the mirror. The foggy, cracked mirror above the fireplace. There was a figure standing inside it, pale and still, but not his reflection. It was a woman dressed in white. Her face was hidden beneath long hair. She raised a hand slowly and pointed toward the staircase without making a sound. Jonathan's breath caught in his chest again. He shook his head, whispering no, no. But her pale hand kept pointing upward, urging him to follow the unspoken command. With trembling legs, Jonathan climbed the stairs. The figure in the mirror did not move. He reached the top and saw the hallway, but it looked different than before now. The hallway seemed longer, stretched unnaturally. Doors lined each side like endless rows. He stepped forward, each door creaking slightly open, revealing nothing but darkness beyond the frames. The third room's door was gone entirely. Jonathan stood there, confused and terrified. Where there had been one door earlier, now there was only smooth wooden wall. He turned around quickly to go downstairs, but the staircase was gone as well. Only more doors stretched endlessly behind him, leading into a corridor that shouldn't exist. Jonathan's breathing grew shallow and quick. He touched the wall beside him gently. The wood felt warm, almost like skin, and the sound of faint heartbeats pulsed. He stumbled backward, pressing against the door. The door opened and swallowed him whole. He fell forward into a different room, landing hard on the dusty wooden floor. The room was filled with candlelight. Dozens of candles burned, but no heat. Their flames were cold, blue, and still, casting eerie shadows across the walls. At the center of the room, a table. On the table sat a single object. A small silver box, old and tarnished. It hummed, faintly as if alive itself. Jonathan approached the table slowly, nervously. The box pulsed with a soft glow. It felt like it was watching him. He reached out a hand to touch. The moment his fingers brushed the box, the candles all extinguished in unison. The room fell into suffocating darkness, and a cold whisper filled the space. "Now you belong to us." Jonathan screamed, but no sound came. He tried to run, but couldn't move. The darkness pressed on him like stone. The box opened with a sharp click. From inside, a pale hand reached out. It grabbed his wrist, ice cold. Jonathan felt his strength leave his body. The room spun and everything went black. Jonathan woke lying on the floor. The lantern was gone, the box closed, but he could still feel its coldness lingering like frost deep inside his bones. The room was no longer filled with candles. Only a single dim light flickered above. He stood slowly, shaking, heart pounding fast. The door he had entered was gone. Now there was only a narrow corridor, stretching endlessly, lined with tall wooden panels. He whispered to himself, "This isn't real." Yet every detail felt painfully real. He walked forward, each step echoing faintly. The corridor bent into a slow curve. On the walls, he noticed strange carvings. Symbols and faces etched deep into wood. The faces seemed to watch him move. Their eyes carved so lifelike, almost breathing. He ran a hand over one face. The wood was warm and soft like flesh. Jonathan stumbled back, stomach twisting in fear. Then, without warning, a door appeared ahead. It wasn't there before, but now it stood, slightly open, glowing with faint golden light. He reached the door, a hand trembling nervously. The golden light spilled across the floor. He pushed the door open very gently and found himself back in the hallway. The original hallway from the first floor. His bag lay where he left it earlier. The mirror above the fireplace stood silent. The woman was gone from its surface. Jonathan rushed to the front door quickly. To his shock, it now opened freely. The cold night air hit his face, and relief flooded through his chest heavily. He stepped outside, staring back at the house. Its windows looked dark, lifeless, and empty. But deep down, he knew it wasn't empty. It had simply allowed him to leave. Jonathan grabbed his notebook from the floor. He ran down the hill toward the road. When he finally reached the old wooden gate, he turned around one last time to look. There, in the top window of the house, a single candle burned, bright and steady. And in that glow, for just a second, he saw her again, watching, waiting, silent. Jonathan couldn't stop thinking back at his small rendered cabin nearby. Jonathan couldn't sleep despite exhaustion. The house was burned into his mind. Every sound outside felt like footsteps coming. He opened his notebook and flipped pages. To his horror, the pages weren't blank. They were filled with words he hadn't written, lines written in dark, sharp handwriting. Return, we are not done yet. The words repeated again and again, covering every page like a chant. Jonathan slammed the book shut, trembling hard. He tried to burn the notebook quickly, but the fire refused to catch on it. The paper stayed cold and touched by flames. It was as if the book was alive. He threw it outside into the dirt, but in the morning it was back sitting on his cabin desk, waiting patiently. The return to the hill. After 2 nights of sleepless terror, Jonathan knew he had no choice. The house had called him back again. His own thoughts felt not his own. He packed his bag and lantern again. As dusk settled, he walked the road. The house stood waiting, silent but awake. Its windows glowed faintly in the twilight. This time the gate swung open freely. The front door opened without a sound. Jonathan stepped inside, clutching his notebook. "I'll finish the story," he whispered softly. The house seemed to hum in response. The walls felt warm beneath his hands. The mirror above the fireplace rippled slightly, showing fleeting shapes of faces, whispering silently. Jonathan sat at the table to write. The pen moved almost by itself now. It wrote of the house, its hunger, its history of trapping lost and curious souls. Every page filled faster than his thoughts. Hours passed without him noticing the time. The candle upstairs burned in steady silence. The rocking chair creaked though no one sat. The house's story, the house told him its dark secret. It had once belonged to a family, a couple and their daughter named Evelyn. They lived happily until one stormy night. The father went missing in the storm. Evelyn stayed by the window, waiting, watching. Days passed and she refused to leave. She starved herself, candle always burning above. Her spirit merged with the walls, whispering. The house became her eternal waiting place. Any visitor who enters becomes her voice, forced to continue telling her tragic story. Jonathan realized this was his fate now. The house wouldn't let him leave again. Not until he told every memory, every ghostly moment that lingered inside her. The final night, by midnight, Jonathan felt drained and weak. The notebook was almost entirely filled now. His handwriting was shaky but constant. The house creaked as if breathing steadily. Then the woman appeared before him. She stood pale and silent, eyes dark. She whispered, "You wrote my story complete." Her voice was soft yet sharp like ice. The front door creaked open slowly. Jonathan stared at it in disbelief. Could he really leave this place now? Or was this just another trick? The woman stepped aside, pointing outward. Her face softened, eyes glowing faintly sad. Jonathan grabbed his bag and the notebook, stepping carefully toward the open doorway. When his foot crossed the threshold, he felt the heavy air release him. The house behind him sighed like a breath. The candle in the window extinguished itself. Aftermath. Jonathan never returned to that hill. But the story never left his mind. Every night he hears faint whispers still, calling from corners of his small cabin. The notebook sits locked in a drawer. Sometimes he finds new lines inside it, written in the same sharp handwriting. Tell my story to those who listen. Jonathan knows the house is still waiting, and he knows one day someone else will walk that lonely road and see the candle burning bright beyond the hill. Story to the Whispering Lake. There is a lake deep in the forest. It is not marked on any map. Locals call it the Whispering Lake quietly. They warn travelers not to visit alone. The water is dark, almost black. Its surface never ripples even in wind. It is said the lake listens carefully, absorbing every sound, every word spoken. People who approach claim to hear voices. Soft, distant murmurs rising from the water. Some say it is the dead speaking, others claim the lake remembers all souls. One autumn evening, Clara ventured out alone. She was a photographer chasing eerie places. She had heard rumors of this lake and wanted to capture its haunted beauty. Clara's car stopped at a dirt path. She carried her camera and small lantern. The forest was quiet, eerily so. Not even the sound of insects remained. The path twisted between gnarled old trees. Their branches looked like claws reaching overhead. The deeper she went, the colder it grew. The wind carried a faint metallic smell. After an hour, Clara reached a clearing. The lake stretched before her, black and silent. Moonlight reflected weakly on its still surface, like a sheet of polished black glass. Clara raised her camera and took photos. The flash briefly lit the water's surface. For a second, she thought she saw shapes moving under the dark liquid. She stepped closer, heart beating rapidly. The water remained perfectly still, untouched. She crouched down, holding her breath quietly. That's when she heard it whispering. The sound was soft, almost like breathing. It seemed to come from beneath her. She leaned closer, trying to hear better. The whispers formed faint words in the air. Clara, come closer, see us. Clara froze, gripping her camera tight. She looked around and no one was there. Only the lake, endless and black before her. Her breath came out shaky and uneven. She stood and backed away quickly. But the voices grew louder, insistent now. Clara, don't leave, come and see it. Her name repeated like a haunting chant. Clara tried to take another picture. Through the lens she saw pale faces. Dozens of faces floating under the surface, their mouths moving silently, eyes staring upward. She gasped and dropped her camera fast. The camera hit the ground with a crack. She grabbed it, trembling, and stepped back, but her foot slipped on wet soil. She fell forward, landing near the edge. The cold water lapped against her hand. The whispers suddenly turned into screams inside. They roared like voices trapped for centuries. Clara pulled her hand away fast. Her skin felt ice cold and numb. A strange mark appeared on her wrist, like pale fingers that gripped her hard. She scrambled to her feet in fear. The lake's surface rippled for the first time. A pale shape began rising from below, slowly forming into a human-like figure. The figure arose as Clara stood frozen, unable to move. The figure was tall, translucent, and white. Its eyes were hollow, dark pits of shadow. Its mouth opened but made no sound. More shapes started to rise around it. One by one, faces broke the surface. Men, women, and children with pale skin and hollow eyes stared straight at Clara. She stumbled backward, heart pounding furiously. The figures whispered together in unison, stay with us forever and ever. Their voices echoed inside her mind deeply. Clara turned and ran toward the trees. Her lantern swung wildly in her hand. Behind her, the water splashed violently loud. It sounded like many footsteps chasing her. She tripped on a root and fell hard. Her knee scraped against rough dirt badly. She scrambled back up, ignoring the pain. She could feel the cold behind her. She didn't dare look back at the lake. The whispers followed her like shadows close. Clara, you belong to us now. Our name hissed like wind through leaves. After what felt like hours, she stopped. Forest was silent, too silent again. Her lantern flickered once, then went out. Darkness swallowed the path completely around her. The cabin in the woods, Clara spotted a faint light in distance. She stumbled toward it, breath ragged and fast. There stood a small cabin, half broken, old. Its windows glowed with faint, yellow warmth. She knocked on the door frantically. An old man opened, eyes wide, surprised. "Where did you come from, girl?" he asked, his voice low and rough. "The lake," Clara whispered, trembling still. His expression darkened, eyes narrowing in fear. "You went near the Whispering Lake, didn't you?" She nodded weakly, clutching her camera tight. "Come in," he said, pulling her inside. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine. He bolted the door and closed all shutters. "You're lucky you came back alive, child." Clara asked him what he meant quietly. The man sighed and sat by the fire. "That lake is not just water, it's a grave for souls who never left here." He explained the legend of the lake. "Many decades ago, a village stood here. A sickness spread, taking lives one by one. The villagers buried their dead near the water. Over time, the graves sank into the lake. The spirits became restless, seeking warm bodies. They whispered to lure the living closer, hoping to drag them down beneath forever." Clara felt her blood run cold listening. She looked down at her marked wrists. The pale fingerprint-shaped bruise had darkened more, like something under her skin was moving. The second night, the old man gave Clara a bed. "Stay here tonight, do not go outside," he warned, his voice stern and trembling slightly. She nodded, though fear knotted her stomach tightly. She tried to sleep, but failed completely. The whispers returned, faint but constant outside. They called her name softly, "Clara, Clara." She covered her ears, but still heard them. The cabin's wooden walls creaked and groaned. Shadows danced along the ceiling and floor. The bruise on her wrist throbbed painfully. It felt like cold hands holding her tightly. She got up and lit a candle. Her reflection in the window startled her. Her eyes looked darker, almost hollow inside. Her skin seemed paler than before, too. The whispers grew louder near the window. "Come back just one touch of forever." Clara stepped away, heart hammering wildly inside. She shook her head, whispering no, no, but the candle blew out suddenly. the window fogged as if someone breathed, and faint handprints appeared on the glass, pressing from the outside in silence. Clara backed away from the window quickly. Her breath trembled in short, sharp bursts. She could feel them calling her mind, pulling her toward the dark water outside. The old man rushed into the room. "Stay away from the glass," he said. "They see you. They want you now." He grabbed the candle and relit it. Clara whispered, "What do they want?" He sighed, his face pale with fear. "They want a life to join them. Once they mark you, they won't stop." Clara looked at the bruise on her wrist. It had turned dark blue, almost black. Then faint veins spread outward like cracks, creeping slowly across her pale skin. The man handed her a small charm. It was made of carved bone and thread. "Keep this close or they'll reach you. It's the only thing that holds them." She clutched the charm tightly in her hand. The whispering outside faded to a murmur, but she could still feel their eyes, watching from the edges of the woods. The second encounter by morning, Clara felt weak and cold. She hadn't slept a single moment. The old man prepared to leave for supplies. "Stay inside, do not follow me," he warned. Clara nodded, but curiosity burned inside. Her camera sat on the wooden table. She needed to know what she had captured, needed to see those pale faces again. She turned on the camera carefully. The images from last night flickered on screen. Her heart froze as she scrolled through them. One picture showed a face right behind her. It wasn't human. Its hollow eyes stared. Its mouth stretched wide as if screaming. Clara dropped the camera, breath quick and shallow. She wanted to leave, but couldn't run. The whispers crept back into her ears. "Clara, the water is waiting, come." The voice was almost soothing, like singing. She shook her head, whispering, "No, stop it," but her feet moved on their own. She stepped outside, the forest strangely silent. The morning air smelled wet and metallic. The path to the lake drew her. The pull of the lake, Clara reached the clearing, heart pounding hard. The lake was perfectly still and black. The surface reflected the pale grey sky, but in its depth shadows moved faintly. The whispering grew louder near the water. Dozens of voices murmured her name together. She felt her knees weaken and tremble. The mark on her wrist burned fiercely. She crouched at the edge of the lake. The water looked impossibly deep and endless. Something pale stirred beneath, rising slowly upward, a face forming beneath the glassy surface. It smiled at her, a terrible smile. Its lips moved without making any sound. Clara felt her mind begin to fade, as though the lake was pulling her thoughts. She leaned forward, inches from the water. Her reflection twisted into something unfamiliar. Her eyes looked black, hollow, and empty. Her mouth stretched in a silent scream. The old man returned suddenly. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders. The old man yanked her back violently. "Are you trying to die?" he shouted. Clara gasped, blinking as if waking up. "They almost had you," he said grimly. "You can't listen to their voices. Once they get close, you're already theirs." He pulled her away from the lake edge. Flora stared at the water one last time. The pale faces sank back into the depths. Their hollow eyes watched as she retreated, the whispers fading to faint, angry echoes. The man led her back to the cabin. "We have to leave before nightfall," he said. "The lake grows stronger in darkness always." He began packing supplies into a bag. Flora grabbed her camera, hands still shaking. "I can't leave without my pictures," she said. The man glared but didn't argue further. "Fine, but never look into that water." Nightfall, they had left the cabin before dusk arrived. The forest felt heavier with each step. Shadows stretched long, moving like dark fingers. The air grew colder with every breath. The path back to Clara's car seemed endless. The whispers began again, faint but rising. They circled through the trees like smoke, calling her name in 100 voices. Flora gripped the charm around her neck. The whispers hissed, "Give it to us." She ignored them, walking faster, nearly running. The old man kept glancing over his shoulder. Then the trees thinned and they stopped. The lake had somehow moved closer again. It wasn't supposed to be there, but it stretched across the path ahead. The man cursed under his breath sharply. "They don't want us to leave tonight." Clara's pulse quickened, fear tightening her chest. The water rippled though there was no wind. The final stand, the old man pulled a small flask out. He poured a dark liquid onto the ground. "This is the only way to fight them," he said, his voice slow and steady. The liquid burned as it touched soil. A faint circle of light appeared around them. The whispers turned into screams of anger, echoing across the trees and the water. Clara covered her ears, heart racing fast. Shadows rose from the lake like smoke. They swirled around, clawing at the circle. The old man shouted, "Don't break the line." One pale hand reached out for Clara. It stretched, fingers long and twisted strangely. She stepped back, clutching the charm tightly. The air grew colder than ice around them. The old man muttered words in a language Clara didn't understand, but it worked. The shadows shrieked and sank back down, the water returning to its still surface. Escape when the circle faded, all was silent. The path to the car was clear. They didn't speak as they walked fast, too afraid the lake would call again. At last, Clara saw her car ahead. Her breath caught, relief flooding her chest. She turned to thank the old man, but he was gone without a trace. She looked back and no one was there. The forest stood empty, still and dark. Only the faint whisper of wind remained, though it carried a soft, distant voice. "Clara, we will find you." Aftermath. Clara never returned to that forest again, but she couldn't forget the whispering lake. Her photographs showed faces she couldn't explain, pale figures half hidden beneath the water surface. At night, she hears them in dreams. Voices calling her name, urging her closer. Sometimes she wakes with wet clothes, as though she walked to the water unknowingly. The charm lies under her pillow nightly. It's the only thing that brings silence. But she knows one day it might fail, and the lake will whisper her home again. Story 3: The Shadow. In the attic there is an old farmhouse on Ashwood Lane. Its walls are cracked, its paint long faded. People say no one stays there long. They say something lives in the attic. Stories vary from family to family. Some speak of footsteps at midnight upstairs. Others talk about scratching sounds on walls. But all agree the attic is cursed. When Marissa and her brother Daniel arrived, they didn't believe the local stories at all. The house was cheap and they needed a quiet place to start fresh again. The first day passed without anything strange. The unpacked boxes swept dust from corners. Marissa found an old wooden ladder leading up to a locked attic door. The key to the attic was missing. She shrugged, deciding it didn't matter much. Daniel joked, maybe the ghost is hiding. They laughed, but unease lingered in their minds. That night, the wind howled outside fiercely. Marissa woke to a faint tapping sound. She sat up, listening in the dark. The sound was coming from above her. She shook Daniel awake and whispered, "Do you hear that?" The attic. Daniel groaned, but then heard it too. A slow, rhythmic tap like fingernails. They grabbed a flashlight and went upstairs. The attic door stood at the hallway's end. The tapping stopped the moment they approached. Marissa whispered, "It knows we're here." Daniel rolled his eyes but looked uneasy. He tried the door, but it didn't budge. The old wood was cold beneath his hands. "It's locked tight," he muttered, stepping back. They returned to their rooms, pretending to sleep, but both lay awake, listening to silence. The wind outside faded, but the house seemed to hum faintly, like it was alive. The second night, the following evening, Daniel searched the basement. Among broken crates and rusted tools, he found a small iron key, dark with age. "Bet this opens the attic," he said. Marissa hesitated, holding the key nervously. "Maybe we shouldn't," she whispered softly. But curiosity pulled them up the stairs to the silent door at the hallway's end. Daniel turned the key and unlocked it. The door creaked open slowly, revealing darkness. The attic smelled of dust and something sour, like damp earth and old, forgotten wood. They climbed the ladder, flashlight trembling slightly. The beam cut through the dark corners. The attic was cluttered with old boxes, a rocking horse, and broken furniture. In the far corner stood a mirror. Its frame was blackened, its glass cracked. Mercy stepped closer and gasped quietly. Her reflection wasn't moving with her. She raised her hand, the reflection stayed. Daniel stared, frozen, his breath caught tight. The reflection smiled, though Marissa did not. Then it whispered, "Welcome back." Of the whispering mirror, Marissa screamed, stumbling backward quickly. The sound echoed through the empty attic. The mirror flickered, shadows shifting behind it. Faces appeared, pressing against the cracked glass. Daniel grabbed her hand and yanked hard. "We're leaving now," he shouted loudly. The attic door slammed behind them suddenly. The ladder shook, nearly knocking them down. They ran into the hallway, panting hard. The door to the attic rustled violently. A low growl vibrated from behind it, a sound no human throat could make. Marissa's hands trembled as she locked the door. "What was that thing?" she whispered. Daniel shook his head, eyes wide open. "We're not going back in there." But later that night, the whispering began. It came from the ceiling, faint but clear. A voice calling Marissa's name slowly, sweetly. She covered her ears but still heard it. The third night, by the third night, they were terrified. Marissa refused to sleep in her room. She stayed with Daniel, lantern burning bright. But even with light, they felt watched. Around midnight, the whispers grew louder again. They heard footsteps pacing across the attic floor. Daniel grabbed a chair and stood ready. "We're going up there this time," he said. Marissa begged him not to, crying softly. But Daniel climbed the stairs, determination firm. The attic door was unlocked this time. It stood open, waiting for them. He stepped inside, flashlight cutting the darkness. The mirror was gone from the corner. The attic floor was empty and still. "See, nothing's here," Daniel said shakily. But then the door slammed behind them. The flashlight flickered, plunging them into black. The whispering turned into laughter, cruel, cold. A shape moved in the shadows nearby. The shape in the corner figure emerged from the darkness slowly. It was tall, thin, and featureless black. Its head tilted unnaturally as it walked. Marissa clutched Daniel's arm, too scared to breathe. The shape pointed toward the far corner. There, the mirror reappeared, glowing faintly red. Their reflection stood inside, smiling unnaturally wide. The mirror whispered, "One of these days," Daniel threw the flashlight at the mirror. It hit the glass but didn't break. Instead, the mirror rippled like water softly. The shape stepped closer, reaching for them. Marissa screamed and pulled Daniel toward the door, but the door wouldn't open at all. The shape's hand brushed Daniel's shoulder lightly. He felt cold seep deep into his bones. The mirror hissed, "You can't escape me." Marissa spotted an old iron rod nearby. She grabbed it and swung at the mirror. The glass cracked, screaming like a living thing. The attic filled with a deafening roar. Shadows burst from the mirror like smoke. They swirled around, clawing at Marissa's arms. Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling desperately. The attic roared like a storming sea. Shadows twisted, forming clawed hands and faces. The cracked mirror pulsed with a red glow. Its voice shrieked, "You're ours now." Marissa swung the iron rod once more. The mirror splintered, shards falling like black ice. Each piece sizzled as it hit the floor. The shadow screamed and dissolved into smoke. The attic grew silent, still, and cold. Daniel dropped to his knees, breathing heavily. Marissa stared at the broken mirror pieces. Each shard reflected her face, but smiling. "Let's get out of here," Daniel gasped. They ran down the ladder, hearts pounding. The attic door slammed shut behind them hard. The house trembled as if alive and angry. The house awakens, the hallway lights flickered, dim and weak. Every door in the hallway creaked open. Marissa felt eyes staring from every shadow. Daniel grabbed her hand and whispered, "Run." They sprinted down the staircase together quickly. But the front door wouldn't budge again. It rattled violently, refusing to open at all. Behind them, footsteps echoed on the stairs. Marissa turned and saw the shadow figure. It moved slowly, yet impossibly close already. Its featureless face tilted, studying them silently. It raised its hand and the wall shook. The windows shattered all at once loudly. Cold wind whipped through the broken panes. The shadow whispered, "The house belongs to me." Its voice rattled the walls like thunder. The basement plan. Daniel spotted the basement door ajar slightly. The downstairs, he shouted, pulling Marissa with him. They stumbled down the narrow wooden steps. The basement smelled of damp earth and mold. In the far corner, they saw something. A chest, old and sealed with heavy locks. Carvings covered its surface, strange, ancient symbols. Daniel kicked it hard until the wood cracked. Inside, they found a blackened book. Its pages looked burned at the edges. Marissa opened it, eyes widening in shock. The book detailed rituals to banish spirits. One passage spoke of mirrors and shadows. To destroy the shadow, break its source, the mirror must be shattered completely, burned. Marissa read it aloud with trembling lips. Daniel grabbed a rusted oil lamp nearby. He smashed it against the basement floor. Flames erupted, licking across the broken boards. "We burn the pieces," he said firmly. The final battle, the shadow shrieked from upstairs furiously. It slammed doors and threw furniture around violently. The entire house shook like an earthquake. Marissa gathered all mirror shards quickly. She threw them into the growing flames. The shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. Its featureless face contorted into a twisted scream. "You will burn with me," it roared. The basement door slammed shut behind them. The heat of the fire spread fast. Smoke curled around them, thick and black. Daniel coughed, eyes watering from the smoke. "Window," Marissa shouted, pointing to the side. A small basement window was half buried in dirt. Daniel smashed it open with the iron rod. They crawled through, scraping their knees badly. Behind them, a house roared like a beast. Flames consumed the wooden walls and roof. The shadow howled as the mirror burned. His voice faded into silence with the fire. Aftermath. Marissa and Daniel watched the house collapse. The flames lit the night like day. The attic window shattered into sparks and ash. The nightmare was finally over, or so they thought. Later, as they rested near the road, Marissa opened her bag to check belongings. She froze when she saw the small shard. One piece of mirror had survived and burned. The shard glimmered faintly under the moonlight. For a moment, her reflection blinked at her, not in sync but on its own. She dropped the shard, heart stopping in fear. Daniel stomped it, but it didn't break. The piece laughed faintly, a cruel sound. They buried it deep under the cold dirt, hoping the shadow would never rise again. Years later, Marissa moved to another city quietly. She never spoke of the attic again. But sometimes, in the dead of night, she hears tapping sounds above her ceiling. Daniel avoids mirrors as much as possible. Every reflection seems wrong, just slightly delayed. Once, while shaving, he swore he saw his reflection smile before he did. The shadow may have survived after all. Perhaps it never lived in the house. Perhaps it lives in the people who enter, haunting them long after they leave. There's a railway line outside the city. It's old, rusted, and mostly abandoned now. But every few weeks, someone reports hearing the sound of a train passing at night. No one sees lights or moving carriages. Only the whistle, long and distant, echoes. They call it the midnight train of Ashmore. Legends say it carries souls of the dead. Lena, a journalist, decided to investigate. She loved mysteries that others viewed deeply. Armed with a camera and recorder, she left one cold evening, following the broken tracks. The air smelled of iron and rain. The moon hid behind heavy grey clouds. Lena's flashlight cut through the foggy path, illuminating pieces of shattered rail and wood. She had been walking for nearly an hour. That's when she heard the first sound. A distant whistle, soft but unmistakable, carried through the dark, silent trees around her. Lena froze, her breath held tight. The sound grew closer, rhythmic, steady like wheels turning on rails clanking faintly. But the tracks ahead were twisted and broken. Their arrival suddenly, the air changed all around. It grew colder, sharper, biting at her skin. A faint light appeared down the tracks, glowing pale yellow through the thick fog. Lena raised her camera with trembling hands. The light grew brighter, larger, and closer. She heard the metallic groan of wheels, but saw no solid shape at all. The light passed inches from her face. A ghostly train, silver and translucent, emerged. She could see rows of empty seats and shadows of people sitting in silence. The whistle blew, sharp and mournful. The sound cut through her chest like ice. Lena stepped backward, barely breathing in shock. She whispered, "Oh my God, it's real." The train screeched to a sudden halt. Doors slid open, though no one stepped out. Instead, a voice drifted from inside softly. "Passenger, the last journey awaits you now." Boarding the train against all logic, Alina stepped forward slowly. Her legs shook, but curiosity pulled her closer. She placed one foot on the cold step and climbed inside the ghostly carriage. The seats were lined with pale figures. They looked human but blurred, transparent, fading. None of them moved or spoke a word. Only their dark, hollow eyes stared straight ahead. The doors closed behind her with a hiss. The train jolted forward, moving without sound. Lena grabbed a seat near the window. The landscape outside twisted into strange shapes. It was no longer forest or tracks. Instead, she saw shadows of forgotten towns. People stood frozen in the dark streets, faces pale, mouths open in silent screams. She turned to one of the passengers. "Are we going?" she asked softly. The figure slowly turned its hollow head. Its voice was a whisper like dry wind, to the place you cannot return from. The conductor at the far end of the carriage, a tall figure in a black coat, stood. His face was hidden behind a mask. It carried a lantern glowing pale blue. Alina felt drawn to the figure strangely. She walked down the aisle, heart racing. "Who are you?" she asked, voice shaking. The conductor tilted its head slowly. "This train carries lost souls only," it said. "You stepped on because you are lost." Alina shook her head in protest quickly. I'm alive, I don't belong here. The conductor's hollow mask reflected her face. Then why are you wandering in darkness? The question echoed deep in her mind. She had no answer, only silence remained. The carriage of memories, the conductor gestured to the next door. Your seat is here, it said coldly. Alina hesitated but stepped through the doorway. This carriage looked different and deeply personal. Photographs hung on the walls around her. Pictures of her childhood, her family, her past. She saw her late grandmother smiling softly, her first home, her forgotten dreams and fears. A lump formed in Alina's throat instantly. The train seemed to know her memories well. The images shifted, showing moments she regretted, people she had hurt, things she had lost. She covered her face, whispering, "Stop, stop." But the pictures kept flashing one by one. The voices of those memories grew louder. "You are one of us," they said. The whispering passenger. Alina turned and saw someone beside her. A man, pale and translucent, staring sadly. "You can leave before it's too late," he whispered, voice trembling like distant echoes. "How?" Alina asked, clinging to hope. "Find the bell," the man replied softly. "Ring it 3 times and step off, but hurry, because this train doesn't wait." The carriage shook as the train sped faster. Lights flickered, plunging everything into moments of dark. Alina pushed past shadows, searching desperately. The sound of the whistle grew deafening loud. Alina ran through the flickering carriage quickly. Shadows of passengers turned their heads slowly. Their hollow eyes followed her with silence. The air felt heavy, pressing on her chest. She entered the next carriage, breath trembling. This one was darker, colder than before. The seats were empty except for one. A small brass bell rested on the cushion. She rushed toward it, heart pounding fiercely. But the moment she touched the bell, the train screeched, shaking violently side to side. The conductor appeared at the doorway, whispering, "You cannot leave until the fare is paid." Alina clutched the bell tightly in her hand. "What fare? I never belonged here." The conductor raised its pale lantern slowly. The blue light revealed her own reflection. Her face looked drained, her skin grey. It was as though the train had stolen a piece of her life already tonight. She shook her head, stepping backwards slowly. "I don't belong to this train," she said. Her voice cracked but remained determined, strong. The conductor's hollow mask tilted slightly downward. "You will if you keep ringing the bell." The bell's power. Alina ignored the warning and rang once. The sound echoed like a church tower bell. The passengers turned their heads sharply together. Some faded, their shapes dissolving into mist. She rang the bell a second time. The windows shattered, wind howling into the carriage. The train screeched as if in agony. The conductor roared, "Stop or you'll regret it." Alina lifted the bell and rang again. The third chime shook the entire train. The walls cracked like splintering glass around her. The passengers screamed in voices not their own. A burst of light filled the carriage. Alina covered her eyes from the brightness. When she opened them, the train was gone. She stood alone on the broken tracks. The empty tracks the fog had lifted, revealing the forest. The night was silent, still, and cold. No whistle, no groan of wheels remained. Only the broken rails under her feet. Alina dropped the bell onto the tracks. It vanished like smoke, leaving no trace. Her hand shook as she clutched her camera. She had to get back to safety. She walked for hours down the tracks. The forest seemed endless and unfriendly tonight. Every few minutes she swore she heard distant voices calling softly in the dark. When she reached her car, it was dawn. The sun painted the trees with pale gold. Alina sat inside, breathing hard with relief. But when she turned her camera on, the footage wasn't what she expected at all. Instead of empty tracks, it showed the train. The ghostly couches the conductors must face, the passengers staring directly into her camera lens. In one clip she saw herself boarding, but her reflection in the windows looked wrong. It smiled while she looked terrified and frozen. Her reflection mouthed words she couldn't understand. Alina slammed the camera shut in fear. She tried to convince herself it was over, but in the distance, faintly, she heard something. A whistle, long, hollow, and far away. The return of the train that night, Alina couldn't sleep at all. Every sound reminded her of the whistle. At midnight, her clock stopped ticking suddenly. The air in her apartment grew icy cold. She walked to the window nervously. Outside, there were no streets or cars. Only train tracks stretched across the ground. A dim light approached in the distance. The whistle blew, soft but unmistakable. The haunted train was coming for her. Her camera on the table flickered alive. On the screen, the conductor was smiling. "Passenger," the voice whispered from the screen. "It's time for your last journey." Final journey, Alina grabbed her keys and ran outside. But the train was already there waiting. Its door slid open without a sound. The inside glowed with pale, cold light. She turned to run in the opposite direction, but the ground behind her turned to tracks. Steel rails stretched endlessly in every direction. She had nowhere else to go anymore. The train's voice echoed in her mind. "You cannot escape. You boarded once already." Her heart pounded as tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "I don't want to die." "Then ride with us," the voice said. "Ride until the end of the line." Alina's legs moved on their own again. She stepped inside, the doors closing tight. What happened next, no one saw Alina after that night. Her car was found parked by the woods. The camera sat on the passenger seat, still recording hours of silent, empty rails. Some say the midnight train of Ashmore whistles louder now, almost every single week. Others claim to see Alina's pale face staring from one of the ghostly windows. The legend of the train continues to grow. It searches for passengers who are lost. If you ever hear that whistle at midnight, don't follow it. Don't walk the tracks. Because once you board, you may never leave. Story 5: The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret. There is an old lighthouse on Blackridge Cliff. Its light hasn't shone for 50 years. Yet sailors claim they still see its beam cutting through fog on stormy nights. The villagers warn travelers to avoid the cliff. They say the keeper never left the tower. Even after death, he still watches the sea, waiting for ships that never return home. Mara, an artist, rented a small cabin. She wanted to paint the ocean at dusk. The villagers told her to stay away, but the lighthouse called to her curiosity. On her third evening, she walked the cliffs. The wind was sharp, biting her cheeks. The waves below crashed with violent force, sending mist high into the cold air. The lighthouse stood tall against the sky. Its stones were blackened by time and storms. The heavy door at its base creaked, opening slightly as she approached the entrance. Mara hesitated, heart thumping in her chest. She stepped inside, smelling salt and decay. The spiral staircase wound upward into darkness. A single lantern flickered at the bottom step. The keeper's journal on a wooden table lay an old journal. Its cover was cracked, its pages stained. Mara brushed dust from the surface gently, curiosity sparking like fire in her mind. She opened it and read the first entry. March 12, 1873. The sea is angry today. A ship vanished near the southern rocks. I fear something waits beneath the waves. The entries grew darker as she read. The keeper wrote of voices in the wind, calling his name during storms at midnight. He mentioned strange lights beneath the water. Mara turned a page and froze suddenly. A sketch of a face stared back. It wasn't human, sharp teeth, hollow eyes, and gills along its thin, stretched neck. The final entry read, "She calls for me, the one in the deep, the sea bride. If I do not answer her tonight, she will take the ships and drown them all." First night, Mara heard something outside the lighthouse door. A faint dragging sound on the rocks. She turned off the lantern and listened. The sound grew louder, closer, deliberate. She peered out through a cracked window. A pale shape moved on the beach below. It crawled on all fours, hair dripping wet, its long arms bending at odd angles. The shape paused, lifting its head slowly. Two hollow black eyes stared directly at her. Mara stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The thing screeched, a sound like breaking glass. She ran from the lighthouse into the storm. The rain lashed her face with icy fingers. Behind her, the pale figure climbed the rocks, moving with unnatural speed toward the cliff. The villagers warning Mara burst into the village inn, soaked. The innkeeper stared at her pale face. "You saw her, didn't you?" he whispered. "The sea bride, she marks who enters. What is that thing?" Mara asked breathlessly. The innkeeper crossed himself and shook his head. "She was once a woman long ago, but she drowned, cursed to guard the shore. The keeper made a pact to stop her." Mara frowned, confused and trembling still. "What kind of pact?" she asked quietly. "The light in that tower is her prison. Without it, she roams the rocks at night." They returned to the tower the next morning. Mara returned to the cliff. She needed to see the truth for herself. The door of the lighthouse stood open wide. The journal was gone from the table. The staircase spiraled upward into deep shadows. Mara climbed slowly, each step groaning loudly. At the top, the lantern room was empty. The great glass lens lay, shuttered on the floor. She felt a presence behind her suddenly. Turning, she saw a man in uniform. His face was pale, skin almost translucent. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. The keeper appears. Mara stumbled backward, eyes wide in shock. "Who are you?" she asked nervously. The man smiled faintly, but it was sad. "I was the keeper of this tower. I kept the sea bride from leaving here, but the light is broken. She's free now." Mara glanced at the shattered lens nervously. "Why did you stop guarding it?" she asked. His voice dropped to a whisper, trembling slightly. "She promised to spare me if I stayed." Mara backed away, heart pounding in fear. The wind outside howled, rattling the glass panes. "She's coming tonight," the keeper said coldly, "and she will take you if you stay." The second night Mara returned to her cabin that evening, but the storm began earlier than usual. Lightning flashed, illuminating the dark ocean waves. She saw something rise from the water. It was tall, pale, and dripping seaweed. Its long arms dried across the rock slowly. Mara's breath caught as it turned its face. The hollow eye stared at her window. She grabbed the lantern and ran outside. Her only thought was to relight the tower. If the keeper's story was true, the light might force the creature back. Mara raced toward the cliffside path quickly. The storm wind roared, pulling at her clothes. The waves crashed violently against the jagged rocks, sending white spray high into the black sky. The lighthouse loomed like a giant shadow above. Its broken windows reflected flashes of lightning. Mara climbed the steps two at a time, her lantern swinging wildly with each movement. Inside, the spiral staircase was slick with rain. She slipped twice, catching herself on the rail. From above came a slow dragging sound, like bare feet sliding across wet wood. The keeper's warning at the top of the stairs, the pale figure of the keeper waited. "You can't stop her," he said grimly. "She's stronger than the light now." Mara held up the lantern defiantly. "Then I'll rebuild the light," she said. The keeper's face twisted in sudden sorrow. "She won't let you," he whispered faintly. The shadows in the lantern room stirred. Something wet dripped onto the floorboards. Mara turned and saw a hand appear, long fingers curling around the edge of the wall. The sea bride, the creature pulled itself through the doorway. Its skin was pale, stretched, and glistening. Seaweed tangled through its long black hair. Its hollow eyes were filled with darkness. The sea bride hissed, showing jagged teeth. Her voice slithered through the damp air. "Another soul to join me below," she said. Mara backed against the shattered lens quickly. The keeper raised his hands in protest. "She doesn't belong to you," he shouted. The bride turned her head slowly toward him. "He broke our pact," she hissed, furious. "Fight for the light." Mara grabbed a broken piece of glass. She swung it wildly toward the creature. It slashed through her wet, pale arm, but the sea bride didn't bleed at all. The creature shrieked, shaking the entire tower. Mara stumbled backward, clutching the lantern. Its flickering flame barely lit the darkness. She screamed, "Help me light this place." The keeper nodded and grabbed metal scraps. Together they tried rebuilding the broken housing. The storm raged harder outside the windows, as if the sea itself wanted her free. Final strike, the bride lunged forward with unnatural speed. Her claws scraped sparks off the metal. Mara swung the lantern, flames leaping higher. The creature recoiled, screeching like shattered glass. Light the wick, the keeper shouted loudly. Mara struck steel against flint desperately fast. The lantern's flame spread to the housing, catching old oil and flaring like wildfire. The great lens blazed, spinning once again. A brilliant beam cut across the storm. The bride shrieked, her skin peeling like ash. She crumbled into mist, vanishing into nothingness. Aftermath, the storm died within minutes of the lights. The sea became calm and eerily quiet. Mara collapsed on the floor, shaking hard. The keeper stood, watching the horizon silently. "You saved them," he said after a pause. "The ships will pass safely for now." Mara looked at him, confused and pale. "What about you?" she asked softly. The keeper smiled, but his face faded. "I can rest now," he said faintly. With a final nod, he vanished like smoke. The lighthouse fell silent, empty and cold. The legacy Mara returned to the village the next day. She told no one about the battle, but sailors soon reported a strange new sight. The lighthouse light shone again after decades. Every night, Mara climbs the tower alone. She keeps the lamp burning through storms. But sometimes, when the waves crash below, she hears a voice whispering from the deep. "Join me, Mara, join me forever." Years later, Mara's paintings of the ocean grew famous. Each one captured the storm's eerie beauty. But in every painting, a shadow appears, a pale woman rising from the waves. Some nights, the lighthouse door swings open. Footprints appear on the wooden stairs. Mara knows the sea bride is waiting still, just beyond the reach of the beam. If the light ever goes out again, the creature will return to claim her soul. And Mara will be waiting, lantern in hand, ready for the next storm to come. Story 6: The House Where Time Stopped. At the far end of Willow Creek Road, there is a house no one dares enter. The clocks inside all stopped decades ago, and yet people say they still tick. The curtains never move, even in storms. The windows always look fogged from within. Locals claim the house traps whoever enters, freezing them in moments that never end. Leo, a young historian, didn't believe rumors. He came to document forgotten homes and artifacts. The Willow Creek house fascinated him deeply, with its long, eerie history of disappearances. The house stood hidden behind twisted trees. Its roof sagged, but it felt watchful. Theo pushed open the creaking front gate. The garden was overgrown, vines curling everywhere. He climbed the porch steps, boots muddy. The front door was unlocked, swinging slowly. The air inside was colder than outside, as if the house breathed frost and shadows. The frozen room, Leo stepped into the living room quietly. The first thing he saw was the clock. It stood tall, a grandfather clock with gold, its hands frozen at exactly midnight. The room was coated in thick dust. A table sat with untouched teacups, as though the owners had just left suddenly. The air felt heavy, pressing on his chest. Leo set down his bag and notebook. He took photographs of the silent furniture. The sound of the camera click echoed like a gunshot inside the quiet house. He walked toward the dining hall slowly. Another clock stood on the fireplace mantel. Its pendulum moved, but the hands did not. It ticked without changing the time at all. The portraits on the wall hung faded family portraits. Their eyes looked almost alive, following him. The largest portrait showed a man and woman, both wearing old Victorian clothing, faces expressionless. Leo studied the portrait and frowned slightly. The man's hand rested on a pocket watch. It was open, but its face was blank. The woman's eyes seemed darker than the paint. He took a step back and settled. Suddenly, the pocket watch and the painting clicked once, softly though it was painted still. Leo's breath caught, he couldn't explain it. The hallway leading to the kitchen was narrower. There were small clocks lining every wall. Each one ticked, but none showed the time. They were all frozen at different hours. As Leo passed, one clock rang faintly. He stopped and turned, but it was silent. The next clock chimed, then the next. It was as if they whispered to him. The study was filled with leather books. An old desk stood near the window. A pocket watch lay on top open. Its glass face was cracked and fogged. Leo picked it up and examined it. It was warm, too warm to touch. Suddenly, the watch's hands began to spin, whirling faster until they stopped at midnight. The room shifted, shadows lengthening unnaturally. The ticking of all clocks grew louder. Leo stepped back, but the floorboards groaned. The door slammed shut behind him hard. The voices he heard faint whispers all around him. They seemed to come from the walls. Don't stay, leave before the clock strikes. The voices were cold, trembling with fear. Leo grabbed his bag and ran out. But the hallway was not the same anymore. It stretched far, lined with endless doors. The clocks on the walls turned slowly. Each clock he passed showed a different time. 3, 2, 7, 45, 11, all meaningless moments. He ran, but the hallway kept going endlessly. It was as if time itself was broken. The woman from one of the doors, she appeared. The same woman from the portrait stepped out. Her dress was black, soaked with dust. Her pale face was expressionless, almost dead. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. Her voice echoed as though underwater. Leo froze, unable to look away from her. Her eyes were deep pools of shadow. "Leave before the last chime rings," she said, "or you'll stay in the clock forever." Leo stammered, "What are you talking about?" But the woman turned and vanished instantly. The clock tower room at the end of the hallway, Leo found a spiral staircase leading upward. The steps were covered with thick layers of dust. He climbed, though fear gnawed at his mind. The stairs led to a clock tower. Gears and pendulums filled the giant's base. They turned, but not in sync with time. Some ticked forward, some backward, endlessly repeating. A massive clock face loomed ahead of him. Its hands were frozen at exactly midnight. Leo felt drawn to touch the glass. His reflection in it didn't match his movements. Leo placed his hand on the glass. It was icy cold, biting his skin. His reflection smiled while he did not. Then, without warning, the clock began to chime. The first chime echoed like a thunderclap. The gears groaned, grinding against themselves loudly. The pendulum swung wildly in all directions. The air shimmered, warping like hot steam. Leo stumbled backward, clutching his chest tightly. The reflection in the glass stepped forward. It raised its head, mirroring him perfectly, but its eyes were darker, almost hollow. The 12th chime, the second chime rang, low and sharp. The hallway below twisted like melting wax. The 3rd and 4th chimes followed quickly. Leo realized the clock was counting down. By the 6th chime, shadows filled the room. They crawled along the gears like black snakes. The woman from before appeared beside him. "Leave now," she hissed, "or be trapped, the hell." Leo cried, his voice trembling. She pointed toward the base of the clock. A door stood hidden behind moving cogs. "You must leave before 12, she warned. The escape attempt, Leo ducked under the massive gears. Their grinding teeth almost brushed his face. The 7th chime rang, shaking the tower. Dust fell like ash from the rafters. He crawled toward the narrow hidden door. It was locked with a rusted chain. He pulled and yanked, but it wouldn't budge. The 8th chime rattled his bones with fear. The woman appeared again, standing behind him. "Use the key in my pocket watch," she whispered, holding out the golden chain. Leo snatched it and unlocked the door. The room of clocks beyond the door lay another chamber. Hundreds of clocks filled every inch of space. Each one ticked out of rhythm and time. The sound was deafening, chaotic, overwhelming. Leo stumbled through, hands over his ears. The 9th chime roared above his head. The clocks all began to strike together. It felt like time was screaming at him. In the center stood a glass case. Inside lay a clock unlike all the rest. It was small, silver, and faintly glowing. Its hands moved backward in slow circles. The truth, the woman's voice spoke behind him again. "This is the heart of the house," she said, her tone flat and cold. "Break it and time will move again." Leo raised his hand to smash the glass, but the woman's expression twisted into anger. Her eyes turned black as ink suddenly. "Or stay with me forever," she hissed. The 10th chime thundered through the room. The clocks on the walls began melting. Their faces warped like soft, dripping wax. Leo's hand shook as he grabbed the case. The final chimes, the 11th chime, shook the floor violently. The walls cracked, showing glimpses of stars. It was as though reality was breaking apart. Leo lifted the silver clock above his head. The 12th chime rang, louder than all. Time froze in the room completely. The woman lunged forward, clawing at him. Her face stretched into a hollow scream. With a desperate cry, Leo smashed the clock. The glass exploded in a burst of light. The shadows shrieked, twisting into thin smoke. The house trembled as though dying around him. The collapsed Leo sprinted through the melting hallway. The clocks fell from walls, shattering loudly. Doors dissolved into nothing but thick mist. The sound of ticking faded into silence. He burst out through the front door. Cold night air hit his face sharply. The house behind him groaned, sinking inward. Its windows shattered, and the roof collapsed. The entire structure crumbled into the earth. Within seconds, nothing remained but dust. The garden, the clocks, the voices are gone. Leo collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. Aftermath the next morning, villagers found Leo unconscious. He tried explaining, but no one believed. The Willow Creek house had been gone for decades, nothing but empty ground there. Yet in his bag lay the silver clock. Its face was cracked but still ticking backward. Leo locked it in a drawer, terrified of it. But sometimes, late at night, it chimes once. Years later, Leo wrote a book about haunted places. He included a chapter on Willow Creek House. Readers loved the story, but thought it fiction. Leo never corrected them, but he knew better. Sometimes, when he looks at his reflection, he sees the woman standing behind him. Her black eyes watch him, patient and cold. And always he hears the faint ticking. He wonders if one day time will stop again. And if it does, he may not escape. Story 7: The village that vanished in the mountains of Black Hollow Valley. There once stood a village called Greymore. It thrived for over 100 years, but one winter it vanished overnight completely. No one knows what truly happened there. Travelers who hiked the valley claim to hear faint bells and children laughing. Sometimes they see lights in the mist. Amelia, a history professor, had heard rumors. Determined to uncover the truth, she journeyed to the valley with her camera and notebook. The trek was long and bitterly cold. Once she reached the valley floor, there were no houses, only broken stones. The remnants of old wells and paths lay scattered under layers of dead leaves. Amelia set up camp near a clearing. She began sketching the strange formations. One structure resembled a collapsed bell tower, its iron frame rusted and twisted horribly. The first night the valley grew silent after sunset. No wind, no rustling of the trees. Amelia sat by her fire, taking notes. Then she heard faint footsteps in the dark. She turned, but no one was there. A soft bell rang in the distance. It sounded like an old church bell, but there were no churches nearby now. Amelia grabbed her flashlight and followed. Her boots sank into the wet ground. The sound of the bell grew louder. She found herself standing before an arch. It wasn't there earlier when she walked. The arch was stone, covered in frost. Beyond it, she saw flickering warm lights, like lanterns swaying in invisible hands. The ghostly village. Amelia stepped through the arch carefully. Suddenly, the fog cleared around her. There stood the village of Greymore alive. Houses stood tall, their chimneys smoking gently. Children ran along the cobblestone streets laughing. Women hung laundry on wooden lines. The air smelled of bread and smoke, as though the village had never died. Amelia's heart pounded as she whispered, "Impossible." A man passed her, tipping his hat politely. His face was pale but kind, expression blank. "Good evening," he said, voice hollow and distant. She tried speaking to others around her. but none of them truly looked at her. Their eyes were unfocused, staring at nothing. It was as if she didn't exist. The bell tower, Amelia saw the bell tower rebuilt. It stood at the village centre proudly. The bell rang again, clear and loud. People stopped what they were doing instantly. They turned toward the tower in silence. Their faces twisted into blank expressions. Amelia felt a cold wave of fear. Something about that bell was unnatural. The tower door creaked open slowly. A figure stepped out, cloaked in black. Its face was hidden beneath a hood. In its hands was a silver staff. "Welcome, new soul," the figure said. Its voice echoed like distant thunder. "You have crossed the Vale of Greymore. Once the bell tolls thrice, you say." The second toll, the bell rang a second time. The sound was sharper, cutting like glass. Amelia covered her ears and staggered. The villagers stood still like lifeless statues. She turned to run back toward the arch, but the archway had vanished behind her. Only endless fog and shadows surrounded her. Her flashlight flickered, growing weak and dim. Amelia cried out, "I don't belong here." The cloaked figure tilted its head slightly. "All who enter belong to the bell," it said, stepping closer with slow, deliberate steps. The old woman suddenly, an old woman grabbed Amelia's arm. Her hands were ice cold and trembling. "Follow me if you wish to live," she whispered, pulling Amelia toward a narrow alley. Figure did not follow them directly, but Amelia heard its voice everywhere around. "You can run, but the bell will find you." The sound chilled her to the bone. The woman stopped at a wooden door. She pushed it open, revealing a cottage. "Stay inside until the bell is silent," she said, closing the door behind them. The woman's story, the woman's face was pale and wrinkled. Her eyes were sharp but deeply sad. "You shouldn't have stepped through the arch," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "What is this place?" Amelia asked nervously. The woman sighed, hand shaking slightly. "This is Greymore, but not as it was. The bell cursed us many winters ago." She told Amelia a story of betrayal. A jealous priest cursed the village bell tower. When it tolled at midnight, time stopped. The souls of the village were trapped. The third toll approaches as the woman spoke. The bell rang once. Its sound pierced the air like knives. The old woman's face turned pale white. "It's the third toll," she whispered fearfully. Amelia's breath quickened, heart beating fast. "What happens when it rings 3 times? The woman gripped her hand, trembling hard. "You'll never leave. You'll become one of us." The bell began to toll again. Its sound rattled the cottage walls fiercely. The old woman pushed Amelia toward a trapdoor. "Down there, it's the only safe place." Amelia crawled down into a dark cellar. The air was damp, filled with earth. Above, the bell rang larger and louder. She heard footsteps moving through the streets. "Who is that cloaked figure?" she asked. The woman whispered through the floorboards softly. "He is the bell keeper of Greymore. He binds all souls when the tolls end." The third toll shook the ground violently. The air grew thick, heavy, and strange. Amelia felt time slow around her body. Her watch stopped, frozen at midnight exactly. The cellar door slammed shut above her. Darkness swallowed the room in an instant. She could hear whispers from the walls, voices calling her name over and over. Amelia fumbled for her flashlight quickly. The beam revealed carvings in the dirt walls. There were names, hundreds of etched names, all scratched with nails and desperate hands. The hidden tunnel, the old woman's voice came faintly. You can escape through the lower tunnel, but hurry before the bell calls again. Amelia found a wooden door behind crates. She pushed it open and crawled inside. The tunnel was narrow, almost suffocating. The sound of the bell still echoed, but fainter now, like faraway thunder. She moved quickly, scraping her knees on stones. The air grew colder with every step. The tunnel twisted like a serpent underground. She followed the light of her flashlight. The underground chamber, after what felt like hours, she stopped. The tunnel opened into a large chamber. In its center stood a black altar. A silver bell rested silently on top. Amelia felt her blood turn cold instantly. She realized this was the source of power. The bell glowed faintly under her light. Carvings on its surface told dark stories. It was inscribed with names of villagers. Each name pulsed with faint silver light. She saw the cloaked figure appear suddenly, emerging from the shadows without any sound. "The bellkeeper, you found my bell," the figure said. Its voice was smooth, almost gentle now. "Would you like to ring it yourself?" The figure extended a pale, clawed hand. Amelia backed away, shaking her head hard. "I just want to leave this place." The bellkeeper laughed low and hollow. "No one leaves unless I grant it." He raised his staff and the altar shook. The bell rang once on its own. The chamber filled with swirling shadows instantly. Amelia grabbed a rock ready to fight. The battle she held the rock at the bell. It struck the silver surface with a clang. The bell wailed like a living creature. The bellkeeper screamed, "Do not touch that." Amelia grabbed the bell with both hands. It burned her palms, but she held on. She lifted it high and slammed it down, shattering it into thousands of silver shards. The ground trembled, and the shadows screamed. The bellkeeper crumbled like black dust. The chamber walls split, light pouring through. Amelia ran toward the opening, heart racing. The tunnel collapsed behind her instantly. She crawled through falling stones and dirt. Her flashlight flickered but did not die. She emerged onto the valley floor again. The village was gone and completely vanished. No houses, no streets, no bell tower. Only mist and silence stretched around her. The air was warm and time moved again. Aftermath, Amelia returned to her camp in shock. The old woman was nowhere to be found. Only a small silver shard lay there, glowing faintly, warm to the touch. She packed her things and left at dawn. The villagers refused to believe her story, but the shard of the bell remained. At night, it sometimes hums and vibrates. Years later, Amelia published a book about Grandma's curse. The book became famous for its eerie details, but Amelia never returned to the valley again. She feared the bell might call her back. Sometimes in the middle of the night she hears distant bells ringing in dreams. When she wakes, her clocks have stopped, frozen exactly at midnight, like Greymoor's curse. Story 8. The Forest of Lost Faces. Deep in the northern wilderness lies Blackthorn Forest. Locals say no one should enter after sunset. The trees are tall, ancient, and unsettlingly silent. People whisper about faces carved into the bark. These faces are said to be alive. They whisper, watch, and remember every traveler passing. Some hikers never return after entering Blackthorn. Those who do are never the same. Nina, a wildlife photographer, dismissed these stories. She had spent years exploring haunted places. Blackthorn Forest was the perfect challenge for her, and she was determined to see it. On a cool autumn morning she began. The forest path was narrow and damp. Her boots crunched over fallen leaves softly. The air felt heavier with every step. The first signs hours passed without any sound of animals. No birds, no insects, no distant rustling. It was as though the forest held its breath. Nina raised her camera and took photos. Suddenly she noticed a tree with markings. At first she thought it was graffiti, but then she realized it was a face. A carved face with hollow, sunken eyes. She leaned closer, heart pounding faintly. The face seemed to smile at her slightly. She blinked, thinking it was her imagination, but the expression had definitely changed. The whisper faint voice reached her ears quietly. It wasn't coming from the wind. Leave before the night takes you, it said. Nina spun around, but no one was there. The voice came again, softer but urgent. She looked back at the carved face. Its mouth had widened, lips curling upward. Nina stepped back, shaking her head in disbelief. Her camera clicked as she snapped a photo. But when she looked at the screen, the photo showed not one face, but many. Dozens of pale faces in every tree. The hidden path. Nina decided to head deeper into the woods. Her curiosity outweighed her growing fear. The forest floor was covered with black moss. The air grew colder with each step. She spotted an old trail overgrown with roots. It looked like it hadn't been walked in decades. Faces on the trees watched her pass. She swore she saw their eyes shift slightly. After an hour, she found a clearing. In the center stood a massive oak. Its trunk was covered in hundreds of faces, stacked on top of each other like skulls. The guardian face, one face on the oak, was larger. Its eyes were carved deep and round. The mouth moved slowly as it spoke. "You have come too far, traveler," it said. Nina froze, gripping her camera tightly. The voice was low, almost human-like. She whispered, "What are you?" nervously. The face responded, "We are the forgotten ones." The story of the forest. The guardian face told her a story. Long ago, a woodcutter angered the spirits. He cut trees without permission from the forest. For this crime, the forest cursed his village. Every soul who enters is marked forever. Their faces join us in bark and stone. Their voices whisper for freedom, but none come. The face's tone grew darker as it spoke. Nina stepped back, heart racing rapidly. "This is impossible," she muttered under her breath. The other faces on the trunk all murmured. Their voices merged into a hollow chant. First nightfall, the sun began to set behind the trees. The sky turned orange, then quickly grey. Nina felt dread settle in her stomach. She needed to leave, but the path vanished. She looked behind her, the trail was gone. The trees had shifted, closing in around her. The faces laughed softly, mocking her fear. "Stay, the night belongs to us now." The moving trees, the forest, began to move slightly. Branches twisted like arms reaching for her. Roots slithered across the ground like snakes. Nina bolted, running blindly through the darkening woods. Her camera swung wildly on its strap. She heard whispers following her every step. The faces glowed faintly in the fading light. "Join us, traveler, join us forever." The hollow circle, after minutes of running, she stopped abruptly. She had entered the strange hollow clearing. In the center stood a ring of stones. On each stone was a carved face. The largest stone stood taller than her. Its face was eerily lifelike and smiling. "You cannot leave, not until you choose," it said, its voice deep and echoing. "Choose what?" Nina demanded, trembling with fear. "To take your place or another's," it replied. The ground beneath her vibrated with its words. She felt as though the earth itself spoke. Nina's breath came in shallow bursts. "What do you mean?" she whispered softly. The stone face grinned wider and replied, "One life for the forest, or none." The other faces around the circle began to chant in a hollow, rising chorus. Their voices blended like wind and thunder. "Choose, choose before the moon appears." The temptation, the ground shifted beneath Nina's boots. The trees swayed there. No wind blew. Faces on the trunks leaned closer, eyes gleaming like damp, polished stones. She saw faint human forms within the bark, arms reaching out as if trapped forever. "Help us," they whispered through cracked mouths. "Free us before the night takes you." Nina stumbled backward, shaking her head. "How can I free you?" she shouted. The guardian face laughed, a deep rumble. "You can't, but you can join us." The chase begins. The ground beneath the circle split open. Roots shot out, coiling like snakes. They whipped toward Nina, trying to grab her. She sprinted into the thick forest blindly. Her flashlight beam danced wildly in the dark. Branches scraped her arms, tearing her jacket. The whispers grew louder, overlapping and frantic. "Don't run, stay forever with us." Her foot caught on a twisting root. She crashed to the ground, dirt in her mouth. When she looked up, faces surrounded her. Hundreds of glowing eyes watched from the trees. The old cabin, through the blur of panic, she saw a faint outline of a structure nearby. A rotting wooden cabin stood among the trees, its roof caved, but walls still standing strong. She bolted inside, slamming the broken door. Her chest heaved as she caught her breath. Inside, the air smelled of damp rot. An old journal lay open on a table. The journal's pages were yellow and brittle. She flipped through them with trembling fingers. The last entry chilled her to the bone. October 12th, they were watching me day and night. I tried to burn the trees, but failed. They are alive. They want my face. If anyone reads this, break the circle. Nina looked up, heart pounding fast. The hollow stone circle that was the key. She had to destroy it before dawn, but the forest seemed to sense her plan. The forest awakened, a loud crack split the silence outside. The trees groaned like something waking up. Their branches scraped against the cabin walls, as if clawing to get inside quickly. Nina grabbed a rusty axe by the door. She pushed through the back window, escaping. The faces screamed in unison, furious and sharp. Stop her, she cannot break the circle. The battle with the forest, Nina hacked through thick roots and vines. The ground shook as if alive beneath her. Every tree seemed to lean closer, blocking her. But she ran, ignoring cuts and bruises. At last, the stone circle came into view. Faces on the stones turned to her. "You dare defy us?" the guardian roared. The ground split, roots shooting toward her legs. She swung the axe, cutting through them. Faces held like wounded animals in pain. She raised the axe high and struck the largest stone with all her strength. Breaking the circle, the stone cracked with a thunderous sound. A bright light burst from within it. The other stone shattered, faces screaming. The forest trembled as shadows began to fade. Faces peeled off the trees, dissolving. Human forms emerged from the bark like mist. They whispered thank you as they disappeared. The guardian face crumbled into dust and silence. They escaped, the forest grew still, eerily quiet again. No whispers, no glowing eyes, no faces. Nina dropped the axe, exhausted and shaking. The sky was turning pale with dawn. She stumbled through the woods, finding her path. This time the trail was clear and open. She reached her car as the sun rose, casting golden light across the silent trees. Aftermath back home, Nina developed her photographs. What she saw made her blood run cold. Every photo showed dozens of faint faces, even in trees she hadn't noticed before. One photo showed her own face carved into the trunk of that massive oak. Its eyes were open, mouth twisted in pain. She tore the photo up and burned it. Years later, Nina never returned to Blackthorn Forest. But at night, she still hears whispers. Sometimes, when she walks near wooded areas, she feels eyes following her every step. Her reflection in mirrors sometimes lags behind. She wonders if part of her remained there, trapped forever in the bark of the trees. Story 9: The Hospital of Shadows on the outskirts of Hollow Ridge stands an asylum. It's been abandoned for over 40 years. The windows are broken, the roof collapsing. Yet people swear they see lights inside. Locals say screams echo on stormy nights. Others claim to hear wheelchairs rolling alone. They call it the Hospital of Shadows. No one dares to go after sunset. Ethan, a paranormal investigator, was determined. He had explored dozens of haunted places, but this asylum had the darkest reputation. He wanted proof, photos, recordings, everything. The first floor Ethan entered through a broken side door. The smell of rust and mold hit him. His flashlight beam danced across peeling paint. Wheelchairs and stretchers lay scattered like bones. Graffiti covered the walls in angry scrolls. One message read, "Don't look at them." Ethan frowned, but kept moving through the hall. His footsteps echoed unnaturally, almost too loud. The hallway led to the old reception area. A cracked desk stood in the center. Behind it, a corridor stretched into darkness. Ethan felt a cold draft from within. The elevator, he found an old elevator in the corner. Its doors were rusted, but slightly open. He shone his light into the shaft. It went down into pitch blackness. A faint noise rose from below like chains dragging across metal floors slowly. Ethan's skin prickled, heart beating faster. He stepped away, deciding to explore upstairs first. The second floor, the stairs creaked loudly with each step. The air grew colder, heavy, suffocating almost. Rows of patient rooms lined the hallway. The doors hung open like broken jaws. He peered into the first room on the left. The bed frame was twisted and stained. A single wheelchair sat near the corner. Its wheels slowly turned on their own. Ethan froze, staring at the spinning wheels. Then a loud bang came from behind him. He spun around, camera ready, heart pounding. The hallway was empty but filled with whispers. The shadow from the far end of the corridor, a shape began to form from darkness. It was tall, thin, featureless, and black. Its head tilted unnaturally as it moved. Ethan raised his camera with trembling hands. The figure glided toward him without footsteps. His flashlight flickered, plunging him into shadow. When it came back, the figure was closer. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping his equipment. The whispers grew louder, like a crowd. "Leave, leave, leave," they chanted, overlapping voices. Ethan turned and ran toward the stairs. The operating room, instead of stairs, he found another hallway. This one led to an operating theater. Rusty tables stood covered in dust and grime. Old surgical tools lay scattered like forgotten knives. A single overhead light flickered weakly. Beneath it, a shadow moved on the wall. Ethan turned, but nothing was there. The shadow moved again, closer this time. The recording. Ethan set his recorder on the table. "Is anyone here?" he asked nervously. The air grew colder with his words. His breath came out in pale mist. When he played back the recording, a faint voice whispered, "We are here." Ethan's heart skipped as he heard it. The voice sounded like dozens speaking at once. The children's ward. He left the operating room, shaken. Another hallway led to the children's ward. Painted animals on the walls were faded. Small cribs lined the sides of the room. A ball rolled slowly across the floor. It stopped at his feet and shook. Ethan felt a presence right behind him. He turned, but nothing was there. Then laughter, soft, eerie, unnatural, echoed. It came from the corner of the ward. A shadow of a child stood there. It tilted its head and vanished suddenly. The basement door. Ethan's curiosity dragged him back downstairs. He found a locked door near the elevator. Basement. The sign above it read faintly. Rust coated the handle like dried blood. As he touched it, a loud scream erupted. It came from deep below the floor. His flashlight flickered violently, almost dying out. The door handle turned by itself slowly. Ethan took a deep breath and pushed. The basement door creaked open slowly, loudly. A cold, stale draft hit his face. The stairs descended into pure blackness below. The basement. Ethan stepped down carefully, flashlight shaking slightly. The air smelled like rust and death. Water dripped from pipes with hollow echoes. His footsteps sounded like someone following behind him. At the bottom was a long corridor. The walls were lined with steel doors. Some had small windows with shattered glass. Inside, dark stains marked the concrete floors. As Ethan passed the first door, a hand slapped the glass from inside. He stumbled back, heart leaping into his throat. The cell was empty, but the handprint remained. The morgue at the end of the hallway. Ethan found the hospital morgue door ajar. He pushed it open, light sweeping the room. Rows of steel drawers lined the walls. One drawer was slightly open already. Ethan approached, sweat dripping from his neck. The smell of decay grew stronger suddenly. He pulled the drawer open slowly, nervously. Inside was not a body, but a mask. It was white, featureless, and cracked at the edges. The mask suddenly turned toward him by itself. A faint whisper hissed, "Wear it," but the mask. Ethan dropped it, stumbling backward fast. The mask rolled across the floor silently. Suddenly, every steel drawer slammed open together. Shadowy figures began crawling out, featureless and black. Ethan grabbed his camera and ran. The hallway lights exploded one by one. The shadows followed, whispering his name coldly. "Ethan, Ethan, you are one of us." The elevator ride. He reached the elevator, heart pounding wildly. It somehow had power and its doors opened. Ethan jumped inside, pressing the button frantically. The doors closed just as shadows reached him. The elevator jolted and began to move, but instead of going up, it went down. The numbers on the panel turned backward. 10, 9, 8, all the way to 1. When the doors opened, it wasn't the basement. It was a hallway he'd never seen before. The walls were black, pulsing like veins. The floor felt warm under his shoes. The shadow doctor at the end of the hallway stood a figure. It wore an old surgeon's coat, blood-stained. Its face was hidden by a cracked mask. In its hand, a scalpel gleamed faintly. "Another patient," it said, voice deep and hollow. Ethan froze, terror gripping every part of him. The figure started walking slowly toward him. Each step echoed like bones breaking loudly. Ethan turned and sprinted in the opposite direction. The hallway twisted like a maze behind him. Doors appeared and vanished as he ran past. The whispering voices surrounded him, mocking his fear. The final room, he burst through a set of double doors. Inside was a large operating theater. Rusty lights swung from the ceiling slowly. An operating table sat in the center. Above the table hung photographs of patients. Their faces were scratched out, names erased. A scalpel lay on the table, wet. He didn't want to know why it dripped. The shadow doctor appeared behind him again. "Stay," it said, "and you'll feel nothing." Ethan grabbed a broken metal pipe nearby. "And this ends now," he whispered, raising it. To fight the shadow lunged, scalpel slashing fast. Ethan swung the pipe with full force. It passed through the shadow, but it screamed. The sound was sharp, almost unbearable to hear. The lights burst, plunging the room into dark. Ethan swung blindly, hearing whispers all around. Hands grabbed him, cold and clammy tight. He fought, kicking and swinging desperately. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang somewhere. The shadows froze, their grip loosening slightly. Ethan used the moment to break free. He bolted toward the nearest glowing exit sign. The escape stairwell was cracked but open. He climbed 2 steps at a time. The building shook like it was alive. The walls bled dark liquid dripping down. At last, he reached the first floor. The front doors were wide open now. Cold night air swept through the hallway. He ran out, not daring to look back. As soon as he stepped outside, the building went silent behind him. No lights, no whispers, just eerie stillness. But his camera kept recording on its own. Aftermath. Ethan reviewed the footage at home. What he saw made his blood freeze. Shadows stood behind him in every clip, their hollow faces inches from his own. In one shot, the doctor's mask appeared. It stared into the lens, whispering his name. Ethan deleted the files, but they returned. Every night, the recordings reappeared on his laptop. Years later, Ethan stopped investigating haunted places altogether. But strange things followed him wherever he moved. Mirrors in his home sometimes fogged over. On the fog, handprints slowly appeared. At night, he hears hospital beds rolling. He wakes to see dark figures watching. The asylum may be gone now, but its shadows remain with him forever. Story 10: The Hotel That Remembers There is a forgotten hotel on Crescent Road. Its nameplate is rusted and unreadable now. Travelers claim they see lights in its windows. Some even hear piano music at night. Locals avoid it, calling it cursed ground. They say anyone who stays overnight will vanish or go mad from nightmares. No one knows who built the hotel. Jared, a travel blogger, loved abandoned places. He thrived on uncovering hidden, eerie secrets. The Crescent Road Hotel was his next challenge, and he wanted a story worth telling. He arrived just before dusk, camera ready. The building rose like a shadowy giant. Its windows were cracked, curtains half hanging inside. The front door stood wide, inviting him in. The lobby smelled of mold and perfume. Dust floated like smoke in the fading light. A grand staircase split into 2 wings. Faded portraits hung crooked on the walls. One portrait caught Jared's attention immediately. It was of a man in a suit, his eyes dark and strangely lifelike still. A brass plaque read, "Manager Mr. Gray." The piano room, from the hallway came faint piano notes. A slow, haunting melody filled the air. Jared followed the sound into a lounge. In the corner sat an old piano. The keys moved by themselves, pressing softly. The music stopped as Jared approached closer. He raised his camera, snapping a quick shot. The flash reflected something standing behind him. He spun around, but no one there. The room was empty, cold and silent. The flash photo showed a faint figure in a tuxedo standing beside the piano. The guest book on the reception desk lay a book. Its cover was black leather, dusty and torn. Jared flipped through its yellowing pages slowly. Every name was crossed out in red ink. The last entry read, "Welcome, Jared Thomas." Jared froze. He hadn't written his name. He slammed the book shut, heart pounding hard. A soft whisper came from behind the desk. "Your room is ready, sir." The room key, a brass key, slid across the counter. It stopped right at Jared's fingertips. He looked up, but no one was there. The key had the number 207 engraved. Jared's curiosity won over his fear. He grabbed the key and walked upstairs. The staircase groaned under his every step. Shadows stretched across the walls, unnaturally long. Room 207, the hallway to room 207 was long. All the other doors were slightly open. From some, faint whispers leaked into the hall. Others emitted cold air like open freezers. He unlocked 207 and stepped inside cautiously. The room was cleaner than he expected. A bed, a desk, and a wardrobe stood. The curtains moved though the windows were closed. On the bed lay a folded note. It read, "Don't look in the mirror." Jared frowned and scanned the small room. There was indeed an oval mirror on the wall. The mirror, he stepped closer, staring at his reflection. At first, it was perfectly normal, but then his reflection smiled without him. The grin stretched unnaturally wide, teeth too sharp. Jared stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The mirror surface rippled like water briefly. Then it returned to normal, reflection calm. Jared whispered, "What is happening here?" The wardrobe door creaked open by itself. Inside hung the black tuxedo and hat, the exact outfit of Mr. Gray's portrait. A faint whisper said, "You look perfect." The dinner invitation, a silver tray, slid under the door suddenly. On it was an envelope with his name. He opened it with trembling fingers, reading, "Dinner is served in the grand hall." Jared hesitated, but curiosity burned stronger. He left the room and walked downstairs. The grand hall was glowing with candlelight. A long dining table was set for one. Plates of food were steaming hot and fresh, but there was no one else around. A chair pulled out by itself, inviting him. "Please have a seat," a voice whispered. The host appeared as Jared sat down cautiously, heart pounding. The candles flickered as footsteps approached. From the shadowed corner emerged Mr. Gray, the same man from the lobby portrait. His face was pale, almost wax-like. "Welcome to my hotel," he said softly. Jared stammered, "This place is abandoned, isn't it?" Mr. Gray smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "This hotel is never empty," he replied. "It remembers every guest, every story, every scream." Jared stood, backing away from the table. "What do you want from me?" he asked. The twist of time, Mr. Gray tilted his head slightly. "You already checked in years ago." Jared frowned, confused and trembling slightly. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. The walls around them began to shift. The grand hall looked brand new. Suddenly, chandeliers sparkled, carpets glowed with vibrant colors. Guests in 1920s clothing danced and laughed. Jared looked at his reflection in the glass. He wasn't wearing his clothes anymore, he was dressed in a black tuxedo. "Welcome back," Mr. Gray whispered coldly. Jared's heart pounded as he stumbled back. "This isn't real," he whispered shakily. Mr. Gray smiled wider, almost too wide. "Oh, it's real. The hotel remembers you." The music in the ballroom stopped suddenly. All the dancing guests turned their heads. Their eyes were hollow, black, and unblinking. In unison, they whispered, "Welcome home, Jared." The ballroom of ghosts, the guests' smiles stretched unnaturally as they stared. Some faces melted, revealing pale, waxy skulls. Jared tried to run, but the floor shifted. It rippled like water, pulling him inward. Mr. Gray tapped his cane on the ground. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. Jared shook his head, too terrified to speak. "You never checked out," Mr. Gray whispered. The words echoed like thunder in Jared's ears. "What do you mean?" he cried out. "You stayed here once, many years ago," Gray said, voice calm but unsettlingly cold. The forgotten memories suddenly, memories rushed back like broken glass. Jared saw himself as a child frightened. He and his parents had stayed at this hotel, but his parents never left with him. There had been a fire, or was it? The memory blurred, unclear and twisted. He remembered running, screaming, and black smoke. But then nothing, just silence and fear. "You were the only survivor," Gray said softly. "This hotel claimed the rest of your family." Jared stumbled backward, feeling sick and dizzy. "That's impossible. They're alive. The hallway of clocks, the scene shifted again with no warning. The ballroom faded, replaced by a hallway. Clocks lined the walls, all ticking loudly. Each one stopped on a different time. Jared turned, but Mr. Gray was gone. Instead, the whispers of the guests filled the air. "Your time is running out, Jared, running out." He covered his ears, but they grew louder. One clock fell from the wall and shattered. Inside the broken face was not Giza but a human eye, blinking and rolling. Jared gagged, stumbling toward the nearest door. Room 309, the door marked 309 swung open slowly. A dim, golden light spilled from within. Jared stepped inside, heart thudding in his ears. The room smelled of perfume and burning candles. A woman sat on the edge of the bed. Her face was turned away from him. "Who are you?" Jared asked nervously. The woman didn't answer, just sighed softly. When she turned, Jared's blood ran cold. Her face was gone, just smooth pale skin. She whispered without a mouth, "Check-in or stay lost." The words echoed as she vanished like smoke. The mirror maze the room dissolved into a long corridor. Mirrors lined both sides, reflecting infinite copies. Jared's reflections moved even when he stood still. Some smiled, others frowned, some were faceless entirely. One reflection stepped out of the mirror. It grabbed Jared's arm with icy fingers. "You belong here," it whispered with his own voice. Jared yanked free and ran down the hall. The mirrors cracked as he passed by. From each broken shard, black liquid oozed out. The liquid hissed, burning holes in the carpet. The whispers grew into screams of laughter. The elevator of memories at the hallway's end was an elevator. Its doors opened with a metallic screech. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs. All the photos showed Jared's life moments forgotten. His first school day, his birthday, his parents. But the last few photos were terrifying. They showed him entering the hotel today, and one picture showed him never leaving. The elevator jolted and began to descend. The light flickered, revealing pale hands above. Figures crawled along the ceiling, whispering his name. Jared pounded the buttons, desperate to escape. The basement, the elevator stopped with a loud bang. The doors opened into the hotel's basement. The air was cold, damp, and heavy. A single corridor stretched into pure darkness. Jared walked slowly, camera clutched tightly. Along the walls were old guest suitcases. Each had a name tag, but all scratched out. He felt a chill when he saw one. It was his family's suitcase from years ago, dusty but still intact with his mother's scarf. He picked it up, trembling and horrified. Suddenly, a hand reached from the shadows. The family reunion, a figure stepped into the flickering light. It was his mother, pale and ghostly. Her eyes were wide, unblinking and empty. "Stay here, Jared," she whispered softly. Behind her appeared his father and sister. Their faces were cracked like porcelain masks. "We're waiting for you," they all whispered together. Jared stumbled backward, tears streaming down his face. "You're not real," he screamed in terror. The figures tilted their heads, smiling strangely. Mr. Gray appeared behind them, smiling coldly. They stayed. "You should too, Jared." The twist Jared turned to run, but the hallway twisted. It bent and folded like liquid metal. He was back in the hotel lobby suddenly. The guest book lay open on the counter. It now read, "Checked in Jared Thomas forever." The pen moved by itself, underlining his name. Jared grabbed the book and tore pages out. The book screamed, its leather cover bleeding black. Mr. Gray's voice echoed, "You cannot leave now." The hotel walls began to close in. The doors slammed and windows vanished from view. He belonged to the hotel's memory. Final game, Jared backed into the center of the lobby. The floor beneath him rippled like water. Shadows of guests emerged from the walls, their hollow faces smiling with broken teeth. "Check out or stay forever," they chanted. Mr. Gray stepped forward, cane tapping rhythmically. "You have one chance to leave, Jared." Jared's voice cracked. "What do you want?" Gray pointed toward the grand staircase slowly. "Upstairs, in room 999 is the key. Retrieve it before midnight, or you remain here." The clocks on the walls began to chime. The ascent, Jared bolted up the grand staircase quickly. Each step seemed longer than the last. The hallways twisted like a maze, endless. Doors slammed behind him as he passed. The numbers on the rooms were wrong. They skipped, doubled, and repeated randomly. 201, 203, 201 again, all confusing. Whispers guided him, this way, Jared this way. At last, he found a black door marked 999. It was carved with strange symbols and scratches. The keyhole was shaped like a screaming mouth. Jared gripped the handle, heart pounding hard. Room 999, the door creaked open into darkness. Inside, the air was suffocatingly cold. A single candle burned on the table. Beside it sat another guest buccaneer. Jared approached it slowly, breathing unevenly. On the first page, he saw his name. Below it, written in red ink, were words, "To leave, you must trade another soul." The impossible choice, the walls of room 999 shifted suddenly. The faces of his family appeared around him. "Stay with us," his sister whispered softly. "You can be with us forever, Jared." Tears stung his eyes as he shook his head. "No, you're not real, you're memories." His mother's hand reached out from the wall. Her touch felt warm, heartbreakingly familiar. "Trade another soul, or remain here," Mr. Gray's voice boomed from everywhere at once. Jared realized what the hotel truly was, a trap feeding on the memories of guests. The stranger appeared suddenly, the door opened behind him. A young woman stepped into the room. She was dressed in modern clothes, confused. "Is this the Crescent Road Hotel?" she asked. Jared's stomach sank with horror instantly. The hotel had lured someone else inside. Mr. Gray appeared between them, smiling broadly. "Trade her soul and you can leave." The woman looked around, terrified and shaken. "What is this place? What's happening?" Jared's hands trembled as he stared at her. He had only seconds to decide. The breaking point, the clock struck 11:59 with deafening sound. Shadows crept closer, whispering and reaching out. "Choose Jared," Mr. Gray hissed sharply. "Her soul, or yours, the hotel demands it." Jared grabbed the guest book with trembling hands. He could write her name and life, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. "No," she screamed, "take me instead." They escaped the candlelight, flared violently, and blew out. The room spun, twisting like a vortex. Shadows clawed at Jared, pulling him downward. The woman screamed, but the door slammed shut. Suddenly, Jared found himself back in the lobby. The front doors were wide open now. Daylight spilled into the hotel's dusty hall. Mr. Gray stood smiling near the reception desk. "You paid the price," he said softly. "The hotel remembers sacrifices like yours." Jared stumbled toward the door, gasping for air. "Leave before I change my mind," Gray added. The twist ending, Jared ran into the bright daylight outside. The hotel behind him looked ancient again. No lights, no gas, just silent ruin. He collapsed on the roadside, sobbing in relief. But when he checked his camera bag, he found the guest book inside of the new one. The last page now read, "Manager Jared Thomas." His hand shook as he dropped it. He looked back at the hotel in horror. The front doors were wide open again. In the reflection of the glass, he saw himself standing inside the lobby, smiling like Mr. Grey. The final truth, Jared screamed, but no sound came out. The world outside the hotel faded away. He was back inside, behind the desk. The brass pack now read, Manager Jared Thomas. The woman he saw earlier stepped inside. "Hello," she calls, voice nervous and soft. Jared tried to warn her, but couldn't speak. Instead, a smile crept across his face. "Somewhere in the dark hallway," Mr. Grey laughed. "You see, the hotel remembers, and so will you." Story 11, the train that never stops. They call it the Midnight Vale Express. It isn't listed on any train schedule. No conductor, no crew, no living passengers. Yet people claim to see it appear on forgotten tracks deep in the countryside. Legend says the train takes lost souls. Once you board, you never return again. The train never stops at a destination, it just moves endlessly through fog and night. Clara, an urban explorer, had heard stories. She thought it was just folklore and lies. But when she saw the glowing tracks one moonless night, she couldn't resist following. Their first encounter, the air turned cold and unnaturally still. A distant rumble grew louder and closer. Clara's flashlight flickered, then went out completely. In the darkness, she heard a whistle. She stepped back as the train emerged. It glowed faintly silver, almost see-through. The windows revealed shadowy figures inside. No faces, just pale outlines of passengers. The train slowed near her, screeching softly. A single door slid open with a hiss. A warm, unnatural light spilled onto the tracks. A voice whispered, "Board before it's too late." First carriage, Clara hesitated, but curiosity overpowered fear. She stepped inside the ghostly train slowly. The interior looked old, from another century. Velvet seats, brass fittings, and cracked glass lamps. The passengers didn't move or acknowledge her. They stared out of windows, blank and hollow. One woman clutched a faded photograph tightly. A man's head rested against his own hand. Clara raised her phone to take pictures. The screen showed something terrifyingly different. The passengers weren't sitting, they were hanging. Their faces stretched with silent screams frozen. The whispering conductor at the far end stood a figure. It wore a black uniform and hat. Its face was hidden behind a mask that looked like porcelain with faint cracks. "Tickets," the conductor whispered, voice like wind. Clara stammered, I don't have one." The conductor tilted its head unnaturally slow. "Then you must pay another way." "But what do you mean?" she asked nervously. The conductor stepped closer, pointing at her chest. "Memories a passenger must give their past or remain here, hollow, until the end." The memory room, before she could answer, the carriage shifted. The walls melted into a long white hallway. Doors lined both sides, all numbered oddly. Clara felt drawn to one labeled 5. Inside was a room she recognized instantly. Her childhood bedroom, exactly as it was. Toys on the floor, drawings on the wall. A music box sat on the nightstand. When she picked it up, it played. The melody was familiar, her mother's lullaby. She dropped it, tears welling in her eyes. The conductor's voice echoed, "We take your memories." The price of forgetting the music box cracked and turned black. Her childhood room dissolved into a grey mist. Clara felt a sharp pain in her head. Memories of her mother faded like smoke. "No, stop," she screamed, clutching her temples. The train laughed a low, metallic sound. "Once you ride, you pay with pieces, pieces of your life, piece by piece." The second carriage, Clara stumbled into the next carriage. This one looked like a dining room. Tables were set with plates of rotting food. Chairs were occupied by faceless figures eating. They turned their heads toward her slowly. Hungry, they whispered in unison, eerie and cold. Clara shook her head and backed away. Their mouths opened impossibly wide, screaming silently. The lights flickered, plunging the room into dark. When they came back, the diners were gone. Only the conductor remained, holding a pocket watch. "Time runs thin," it said softly. Third carriage, the next carriage, was worse than before. The walls were covered in mirrors. Each mirror showed Clara's reflection, but twisted. One smiled when she wasn't, another cried blood. She tried looking away but couldn't. The reflections whispered her name repeatedly. "Clara, Clara, you belong here forever." Her breath fogged the mirrors though the air was cold. One reflection stepped out of the glass. It looked exactly like her but pale. "You can't leave," it said in her voice. "You're already part of the train now." The first twist, the reflection grabbed her wrist tightly. Clara screamed and pulled with all strength. The reflection's nails dug into her skin. Blood dripped onto the carriage floor, hissing. Suddenly, the train screeched and slowed down. The reflection froze and turned to mist. Clara collapsed onto the seat, shaking violently. The conductor appeared again, tilting its head. "You still don't understand, do you?" they asked. "This train was built for you." Clara stared, confused and terrified at once. "What do you mean for me?" The revelation, the walls of the carriage shifted again. This time they formed a hospital hallway. Clara saw herself as a child, injured. She was lying in a hospital bed crying. A doctor stood over her, speaking softly. "We lost her parents in the accident," the doctor said to a shadowy figure nearby. "She was the only one who survived." Clara fell to her knees, sobbing hard. "I don't want to remember this anymore." The conductor's mask cracked with a smile. "That's why the train came for you." The memory carriage, Clara stumbled into another carriage reluctantly. This one was filled with floating photographs. Each photograph showed moments from her past. Birthdays, school trips, her first apartment, everything. But the photos began to burn slowly. One by one, they dissolved into black ash. Clara screamed and tried to grab them. Her fingers passed through them like smoke. "Why are you doing this?" she cried. The conductor's voice came from all directions. "To make room for the journey ahead," it whispered, "you must forget where you've been." The passenger who speaks, Clara spotted a man in the corner. Unlike the others, he wasn't frozen. He stared at her with sad, tired eyes. "You shouldn't have boarded," he said softly. "Why? How do I get off?" The man shook his head slowly, resigned. You don't. I've been here for decades. Every time I think it ends, it restarts. Clara knelt beside him, desperation rising. Then why are you still you? The man sighed, pointing at his chest. I gave up everything but one memory. I can't let go of my daughter. The bog and the conductor appeared beside them silently. No passenger may keep their attachments, it hissed. If you give me her memory, you're free. The man's jaw trembled, but he shook his head. Clara stood, glaring at the masked figure. What if I refused to give anything? The conductor tilted its head like a predator. Then you stay forever, hollow, one of them. She looked at the other passengers around her. Their hollow faces seemed to nod in agreement. One reached out, touching her arm gently. Its skin was cold, like frozen wax. The fourth carriage Clara ran, leaving the man behind. The next carriage was darker than all others. The windows were sealed, painted over black. The air smelled of ash and old fire. In the center stood a single object. A charred car door, twisted and burned. Clara's breath hitched. She recognized it instantly. It was from her parents' car accident. Flashes of memory assaulted her mind violently. Her father screaming, her mother reaching for her. The sound of glass shattering, flames roaring louder. Then the silence of survival and guilt. The shadow child from the far corner, something moved slowly. A small shadow stepped into the light. It looked like a child but featureless. Its head tilted as if it recognized her. Clara, it whispered in a soft voice. Her knees weakened as she stepped closer. Who are you? She asked quietly. The child extended its small hand to her. Suddenly, its voice turned deep and distorted. Give me the memory of them and you will be free of pain. Clara shook her head, tears blinding her eyes. No, I can't lose them. And then, the train's anger, the entire train shook violently with rage. Windows cracked and sparks flew from the ceiling. The passengers began to scream in unison. Their hollow mouths stretched wider than possible. You cannot leave with what you carry, the conductor's voice roared like thunder. You will either let go or be taken. Clara collapsed onto her seat, trembling hard. The train's speed increased, wrestling everything violently. She clutched her back, whispering to herself, there must be another way out. The hidden door. While scanning the carriage, she saw something. Behind a torn seat was a trapdoor. Its handle glimmered faintly in the dim light. Clara crawled toward it, hands shaking with fear. She yanked the handle and pulled it open. A narrow staircase led downward into shadows. The passengers turned their heads to watch her. Their voices whispered, don't go, don't go. Clara ignored them and descended carefully. The steps creaked like old bones breaking. The air below was colder, damp, and thick. She felt like she was sinking into another world. The engine room at the bottom was the train's engine, but it wasn't like any engine she knew. Black gears turned, powered by glowing human hearts. They pulsed and beat like living organs. Clara's stomach churned at the horrific sight. In the center stood a black throne. On it sat the conductor, mask removed. Its face was featureless, smooth, and pale. "You think you can run?" it said. "Every passenger tries, none ever succeed." Clara spotted a lever near the engine. If she could stop it, maybe she'd escape. Fight Clara lunged toward the lever with force. The conductor rose, moving faster than light. His clawed hand slashed at her arm. Blood sprayed across the cold metal floor. She screamed but pulled the lever anyway. The train screeched, metal grinding violently. The lights flickered and the walls cracked. Passengers screamed from above like trapped souls. The conductor roared, voice shaking the entire train. "You fool, you'll destroy us all." Clara gritted her teeth, pulling harder. "Then I'll take you with me." The second twist, instead of stopping, the train transformed. The walls melted, turning into hospital curtains. Clara was lying in a hospital bed again. Doctors rushed around, voices echoing, "She's waking up." A nurse leaned over, smiling warmly. "You were in a coma for months," she said. Clara blinked, trying to process the words. Was the train all in her mind? Awakening, Clara stared at the white hospital ceiling. The beeping of monitors replaced the train's hum. Her arm was bandaged where the conductor struck. But how could a dream leave real wounds? Her mother's photograph sat beside her bed. It was the same one from the train. A doctor entered, smiling too widely to be real. "Welcome back," he said. "You've been away so long." Clara's heart pounded as she whispered, "Away where?" The doctor tilted his head and grinned. "On the Midnight Vale Express, of course." The hallway of lies before she could scream, the room changed. The walls rippled and the doctor vanished. She was now standing in a hospital hallway, but the lights flickered and the floor shook. From behind a door came the sound of wheels. A train whistle echoed faintly through the hall. Clara staggered backward, her breath shallow and fast. The hospital was just another carriage. At the hallway's end, the conductor appeared. It tapped its mask, smiling without a mouth. "Did you think waking up meant freedom?" it asked. "This train rides through every reality you know." The final bargain, Clara screamed, "Let me go. I'm done." The conductor's hollow eyes burned into hers. "You can leave," it whispered, "but not whole. Give me one last memory, the happiest one." Images flashed through Clara's mind like knives. Her father's laugh, her mother's hugs, her childhood home. She clutched her head, shaking violently. "No, I can't lose him, I can't." "Then you stay," the conductor replied calmly. "The train always keeps those who hold on." The hospital walls collapsed into a moving carriage. Passengers watched her, silent but expectant. The key from the corner of her eye, she saw it. A key glowing, golden and pulsing faintly. It sat on a hook above the door. Clara ran for it, ignoring the whispers. The conductor hissed, its voice turning demonic. "You cannot take that, it's not yours." Clara grabbed the key and shoved it into the door. The door cracked, glowing white like a sunrise. The sacrifice, the train screeched as the walls crumbled apart. Shadows screamed, passengers melted into mist. The conductor lunged at her with clawed hands. "You'll regret this choice forever," it howled. Clara turned the key and pushed hard. A blinding light engulfed the train completely. She felt herself being pulled in two directions. One path to freedom, the other to oblivion. Her parents' faces appeared in the light. "Let us go," her mother whispered gently. With tears streaming, Clara released the memories. The light swallowed them, leaving only silence. The returned Clara awoke on cold train tracks at dawn. The forest around her was eerily quiet. Her phone was dead, her bag empty. The Midnight Vale Express was gone. She staggered home, her memories fragmented and broken. She remembered pieces, shadows, whispers, a lost train. But she couldn't remember her parents' faces anymore. That emptiness cut deeper than any wound. The epilogue months later, Clara received an envelope with no name. Inside was a black and white photo of the train. In the window, her face stared back smiling. On the back, a single message read, "The Midnight Vale Express always returns." The dark ending that night, Clara heard the whistle again. It echoed outside her apartment, soft but clear. She ran to the window and froze instantly. The glowing train was parked in the street. The conductor stood outside, holding her memories. "They belong to us," it said calmly, "and soon so will you." The lights flickered in her apartment. The floor rippled like steel tracks forming. Before she could scream, everything went dark. The next morning, her apartment was empty. Only a faint whistle could be heard far away. The Midnight Vale Express had taken another soul. Story 12: The House That Builds Itself. There is a place known only in rumors. A patch of land where no house stays standing. People say structures built their collapse overnight. Others claim a house appears there on its own. Locals avoid the land like a plague. They call it the builder's ground. No one knows who or what builds there, but everyone agrees no one should enter. Daniel, a freelance architect, didn't believe stories. When he heard about the cursed land, he decided to see the truth himself. He drove out one stormy afternoon. At first sight, the land looked strangely untouched by time. A circle of grass grew unnaturally green. In the center stood a small house newly built, though no workers were seen. Its white walls gleamed despite the rain. The windows were spotless, but curtains drawn. The front door stood slightly open, inviting him. Daniel grabbed his camera and approached cautiously. "Who built this?" he muttered to himself. His phone showed no signals of construction work. There were no tire tracks, no footprints. The house simply existed, perfect and silent. The entrance inside the house smelled of fresh wood. It was fully furnished, tables, chairs, and lamps. Everything looked brand new, but unclaimed. The living room held a burning fireplace. Daniel's boots left wet prints on the floor. The silence was unnerving, almost too quiet. On the wall above the fireplace hung a single photograph of him smiling. Daniel froze, staring at the impossible photo. He had never been inside this place. "Someone is messing with me," he whispered. but deep down, fear clawed at his gut. The moving rooms, he stepped into the hallway, camera ready. The house felt bigger than it looked outside. Doors lined both sides, some slightly open. He entered the first room, the kitchen. The counters were covered in uncooked meals, bowls of fruit, bread, and steaming soup. Daniel touched the soup, it was hot. His camera clicked as he took a photo. When he turned back, the door had moved. It was now on the opposite wall. The hallway outside was gone entirely. The kitchen had changed shape behind him. The voice, a low hum, filled the air suddenly. The walls trembled as if breathing. "Welcome home," a voice whispered softly. Daniel spun around, scanning the kitchen. "Who's there?" he demanded, voice shaking. The voice chuckled like creaking wood. "This is your home now, Daniel. I built it just for you." His heart pounded as he backed away. "Why do you know my name?" he yelled. The voice didn't answer, only laughed. The lights flickered, plunging him into shadow. The upstairs, a staircase appeared that hadn't been there. It spiraled upward into complete darkness. Daniel grabbed his flashlight and climbed carefully. Each step creaked like it might collapse. At the top was a long hallway. The walls were lined with framed photographs. Every photo was of Daniel at different ages. His childhood, teenage years, even last week. "This is impossible," he muttered, sweating. He touched one photo and it pulsed warm. The image changed, showing him standing here now. He dropped it, stumbling backward in shock. The bedroom at the hallway's end was a bedroom. A large bed with black sheets awaited. On the pillow lay a leather-bound book. Daniel picked it up with trembling hands. The first page read, "Welcome, owner Daniel Ross." His full name printed in careful handwriting. The following pages were blank except for the final line, "Sign here to stay." Daniel slammed the book shut angrily. "I'm not staying here," he said aloud. The house groaned like it disagreed. The door slammed shut behind him hard. The window trick. Daniel ran to the window for escape. Outside there was no rain, no road. Instead, he saw endless corridors of rooms. The house stretched infinitely in every direction. He punched the glass, but it bent. It wasn't glass, but some living surface. It rippled under his fist like water. The voice laughed, louder this time. "You can't leave, you are part of me." The wall shifted, forming new hallways. The bed dissolved into wooden planks and nails. The house was rebuilding itself in real time. The builder, a figure, stepped out of the wall suddenly. Its body looked like human woodwork, arms like planks, eyes like nails hammered in. It carried a hammer dripping with tar. Daniel backed away, shaking uncontrollably. What are you?" he stammered. The figure tilted its head, creaking loudly. "I am the builder." "You are unfinished." The builder raised its hammer slowly. "Every house needs a heart to survive, and you, Daniel, will be mine." The trapdoor. Daniel bolted toward the hallway, running fast. The floor beneath him began to shift. Boards curled up like sharp wooden teeth. He spotted a trapdoor just ahead. Throwing it open, he jumped inside. He tumbled down a dark, narrow chute. His flashlight flickered as he slid down into a massive, unfinished basement chamber. The basement was filled with mannequin-like bodies. They were made of wood but shaped like people. Some had real human eyes embedded in them. Others were cracked open, revealing bones inside. Daniel gagged, covering his mouth in horror. The voice echoed, "Every house needs its residents." One mannequin twitched, its wooden mouth opening. "Stay here with us," it whispered faintly. The awakening of the mannequins, Daniel stumbled backward, tripping on loose boards. The mannequins' heads turned in eerie unison. Their joints creaked as they started to move, wooden fingers clawing toward him with snapping sounds. One mannequin opened its chest cavity. Inside was a heart still beating. Daniel's stomach twisted as he realized it was a human heart, not wooden. He grabbed a rusted pipe for defense. "Stay back," he shouted, voice trembling. The mannequins paused, tilting their heads unnaturally. "Once you're built, you'll understand," they whispered. The blueprint room, Daniel ran deeper into the basement. He found a heavy iron door ajar. Pushing it open, he entered a study-like space. Blueprints covered the walls from floor to ceiling. He recognized some of the house's rooms, but there were other designs too, horrifying ones. Drawings of people split into parts, labeled legs attached, a torso carved, a heart anchor. A large parchment on the table read, Blueprint 1327 Subject, Daniel Ross. It detailed his height, weight, and even a sketch of his own face in wood. Daniel's breath hitched as realization struck. The builder wasn't making a house, it was making him part of the house. The builder returns, the door behind him slammed shut instantly. The builder stood there, hammer dripping black tar. Its wooden face twisted into something like a grin. "You found your plans," it said softly. Daniel gripped the pipe tighter, backing up. "I'm not becoming part of this nightmare." The builder tilted its head, cracking loudly. "You already are." You stepped inside willingly. The walls around them began to pulse. Wooden planks stood out like skeletal fingers. Every house needs a living soul to breathe, and you're just the right fit. First twist, Daniel swung the pipe at the builder. It shattered one of its wooden arms. The builder shrieked like a splintering tree, but the pieces crawled back together unnaturally. He turned and smashed through a wall panel. Behind it was another hidden hallway, but this one was unfinished, raw beams, nails sticking out like jagged teeth. Daniel realized something strange in that moment. The house wasn't just a structure. It was growing with every move he made. Every step he took, the wall shifted. The room of memories, he entered a small, half-built room. Inside were dozens of objects from his past. His childhood bike, his father's toolbox, old photos. He picked one up, it burned his hand. The photo showed him inside the house owner. The image shifted, now showing him bleeding. Then the image showed him lying dead. "No, this isn't real," Daniel whispered, panicking. The voice returned deeper than before. "Every memory becomes a wall, every fear a nail. Your life is building me, Daniel." "Nay." The wooden doppelganger from the far corner, something moved slowly. It was a wooden figure, but of him. The carving was perfect, from his face to his clothes. It stepped forward, hammer in hand, smiling. Daniel's own voice came from it, eerily distorted. "You can leave," it said, "but I'll stay. I'll take your life while you fade away." The figure lunged, swinging the hammer. Daniel blocked with the pipe, sparks flying. The impact rattled his bones, nearly breaking his arm. He ran, barely dodging the next strike. The staircase of traps, the hallway had twisted into a staircase. Steps retracted and extended like jaws snapping. Daniel leaped over gaps, barely avoiding nails. Wooden hands reached from the walls, grabbing his legs. He kicked free, heart pounding like thunder. Above, he saw a faint light glowing. A door, maybe an exit, was near. He pushed harder, ignoring pain in his side. The false exit. Daniel burst through the glowing door, gasping. He found himself outside under a night sky. The house stood silent behind him now. He dropped to his knees, relieved and shaking. But then the star started to move. The ground pulsed under his feet like wood. He looked down, the grass turned to wooden planks. The world beyond was just another room. The house laughed, a deep, resonating sound. "You think you've left, you're still inside me." Daniel turned to see another house ahead. Identical. Waiting. Breathing. The builders offer the builder stepped out from the front porch. "You can't escape me," Daniel had said. "But I'll give you a choice now. Join me and build forever or break." Daniel clenched his fists, shaking his head. "I'd rather burn this place down." The builder tilted its head with interest. "Then try, but fire feeds me too." The house's walls started warping and tightening. Doors slammed, windows sealed like cement. Daniel spotted a can of oil nearby. "Let's see if you can burn," he hissed. Fire. Daniel splashed the oil across the walls. He found a box of old matches inside. Striking one, he threw it on the planks. The fire spread fast, crackling and roaring. The builder shrieked, its wooden limbs charring. "You'll burn with me," it screamed in fury. Daniel grabbed a chair and smashed a window. The flame surged as he climbed through. But outside wasn't outside, just more holes. Flaming walls closed in like hungry beasts. The house was building and burning at once, trapping him in an endless cycle of fire. The second twist, Daniel realized something as the fire spread. The blueprints he saw earlier were alive. They were pulsing on the table upstairs. If he destroyed them, maybe the house would die. He ran back into the burning rooms. Smoke filled his lungs, making him cough hard. The builder chased him, half-burned but relentless. Its tar-like blood dripped onto the floor. Daniel smashed into the study room. The blueprints were there, glowing and moving. He grabbed them, threw them into the fire. The house screamed, a sound like tearing sky. The collapse of the house howled like a living beast. Its walls splintered, nails shot like bullets. The mannequins collapsed into piles of broken limbs. The builder screamed, staggering through the flames. "You can't destroy me," it roared. "I live in every house, every wall." Daniel grabbed a burning plank and swung it. The builder's head shattered like brittle glass. For a moment, everything went still. The flames dimmed, the walls stopped moving. Daniel dropped to his knees, coughing hard. He thought he'd finally won, but he hadn't. The endless rooms, when the smoke cleared, Daniel stood up. The study was gone, replaced by corridors. Not one or two, but hundreds of endless rows. Each hallway looked like part of a new house. He ran, but the halls rearranged themselves. Doors appeared and vanished as he passed. Some doors led to kitchens, others to bedrooms. One even opened into the same basement. "Stop," he screamed at the walls, panting. "Why won't you let me out?" The voice replied, calm and amused. "You become the blueprint now, Daniel." The final blueprint, Daniel stumbled into another room with drawings. This one was unlike the others before. On the table was a single blueprint. The title read, "Ross House Complete." The design wasn't of the building. It was of his own body. Each part was labelled, leg attached, chest carved, a heart anchor here. He realized with horror that the builder had succeeded in copying every detail of him. The house didn't want to kill him, but wanted to become him. The mirror trap and mirror stood in the corner, cracked. When Daniel looked, his reflection smiled back. "You're almost finished," it whispered coldly. "Once you step through, you're part of me." Daniel grabbed a nearby chair and smashed it. The reflection didn't break, instead, it laughed. "You can't destroy what you already are," it said as its hand pushed through the glass. The reflection grabbed his throat and yanked. Daniel struggled, kicking and punching wildly. The walls around him began to bleed tar. The house itself was pulling him in. The desperate escape, Daniel's hand brushed the burning blueprint pile. He grabbed one page still smoldering and yelled, "If I burn my design, what happens?" The voice roared, "No, you are the house." Daniel threw the page into the last flame. Instantly, the floor cracked and walls folded. The builder screamed, dissolving into black smoke. The house collapsed into splinters and dust. Daniel fell, rolling onto damp earth outside. For the first time, there was no door. The land was bare, the house gone. He lay there gasping, thinking it was over. The third twist days later, Daniel returned to his apartment. But something felt wrong, horribly wrong. The walls of his place were different. The wood grain looked just like that house. When he touched the wall, it pulsed. A faint heartbeat echoed through the panels. On his kitchen table lay a new blueprint. It read, "Ross Apartment Phase 2. Daniel dropped the paper, trembling in fear. "No, you're gone. I burn you." The lights flickered, and the voice whispered, "Did you think I was just one house?" The final scene that night, Daniel woke to hammering sounds. Nails clicked and boards groaned all around. His bedroom wall stretched taller and wider. The ceiling bent like soft wood beams. The builder's voice returned, smooth and cold. "You left my land, but I followed you. You will be the first living foundation. Your body will anchor every room I build." Daniel grabbed a knife, cutting his palm. "If I have to destroy myself, I will." The voice chuckled like cracking wood. "Do it. it only makes you mind faster. The ending the next morning, Daniel's neighbors reported screams. When police entered, the apartment was empty. The walls were freshly painted, pristine white. But on the floor, carved deep, were words, Daniel Ross completed structure. Outside, a brand new house appeared overnight. No workers, no tools, just perfect construction. A window slid open as if breathing. From inside, a voice whispered, "Welcome home." And that, dear dreamers, brings us to the end of tonight's story. You've just journeyed through another chilling yet mesmerizing tale, the story that whispers in the shadows, plays with the edges of reality, and leaves us wondering what's waiting for us when the lights go out. I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I enjoy telling it. Here on Sleepytime Stories, every tale is crafted not just to entertain you, but to gently pull you into that mysterious place between wakefulness and dreams, where the imagination takes over and reality feels just a little less certain. Reflecting on the story, did you feel yourself drawn into the dark hallways of the story? Were there moments when you asked yourself, what would I do if I were trapped inside a house that was alive? That's the power of a good story. It makes you live 1,000 different lives, even for just a few moments. Think about the twist in this tale. What was the part that caught you completely by surprise? Was it when the builder revealed its horrifying blueprint? Or when Daniel realized that the house was not just a structure, but a living entity feeding on his memories and fears? Questions for you. I want to hear from you, and this is where you get to be part of Sleepytime Stories. What would you have done in Daniel's place? Would you have tried to burn the house, or would you have looked for another way to escape? Do you think the builder was truly evil, or just a reflection of Daniel's own fears? If the house appeared in your neighborhood, would you dare step inside just for curiosity? Your answers and thoughts could inspire the next story on this channel, because I read every single comment, and I love weaving your ideas into future tales. Engage with the channel. If the story kept you glued until the very end, consider joining our Sleepytime family by subscribing right now. It's completely free, but it means so much to me because it helps keep these stories alive and reaching new listeners every day. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. I post long-form, immersive stories like this one, tales that you can listen to as you fall asleep, relax on a quiet evening, or simply enjoy when you want to escape reality for a while. Why Sleepytime Stories exist? I started this channel because I believe that everyone needs an escape. In our busy, loud world, there's something magical about letting your mind wander into stories, especially the mysterious ones. Each week, I pour hours into crafting original tales that not only bring shivers but also a soothing rhythm to help you unwind. Whether it's haunted houses that breathe, trains that collect lost souls, or forests whispering forgotten secrets, I want these stories to make you feel something: wonder, fear, curiosity, or simply peace as you drift to sleep. Questions for future tales now. I'd love to know, what kind of story would you like next? A haunted hotel? A time loop mystery? Maybe something with a twist you've never seen before? Do you want more characters who face impossible choices, like Daniel did? Or do you prefer tales of eerie objects, cursed places, and paranormal adventures? Your suggestions guide me. When you comment with your ideas, you are not just a listener, you're part of the creative process. So here's what I want you to do. 1. Comment below, tell me your favorite part of this story and share how it made you feel. 2. 3. Suggest a title or theme for the next Sleepytime story. 4. 5. Share this video with someone who loves mysteries and eerie bedtime tales. Trust me, they'll thank you for it. 6. And if you're listening right now while lying in bed, ready to drift off, I hope this story kept your imagination alive just long enough to make your dreams a little more interesting. A gentle goodbye before I go, let me ask you, do you believe in places that are alive? Have you ever walked into a room that felt like it was watching you? Do you think stories like these come from imagination, or are they echoes of real things we can't explain? I love hearing your spooky experiences. So, if you've ever had something strange happen in a haunted house, a weird dream, or a mysterious place, share it in the comments. Who knows? Your experience could become a future Sleepytime story. If you haven't already, subscribe to Sleepytime Stories because every week I'll bring you more original stories that combine mystery, suspense, and that calming, slow narration that helps you unwind. Also, check out our playlist of previous stories. There's something for every mood, whether you want chilling haunted tales, relaxing mysterious adventures, or soft-spoken narratives to help you drift to sleep. Thank you for spending your evening with me here on Sleepytime Stories. Your support means the world. Every like, every comment, and every share keeps this channel alive. As you close your eyes tonight, remember the twists of this story. Imagine the house still standing somewhere out there, waiting for its next visitor. Could that visitor be you? Or will you wisely stay away from places that whisper your name? I'll leave you with this question. If you found a house that seemed to know everything about you, would you explore it out of curiosity, or would you walk away? I can't wait to read your answers below. Until next time, sleep well, dream deeper, and never stop imagining. Good night from Sleepytime Stories, where every night a new tale awaits you.